Chapter 1. Using the key the landlord gave me, I finally opened the door that was starting to rust. The first thing that hit me was a slightly stale smell. If I had to describe it, it was probably the smell of a damp mat that started to mold. Fortunately, the smell wasn't strong and was tolerable. This room on the second floor was very small. Although it wasn't as big as a capsule apartment, excluding the counter, closet, and simple toilet cubicles, the area should be less than 3 square meters. There was also a balcony facing the sun opposite the door. Because of the office building in front, it probably couldn't get much sunlight from day to night, but it was better than nothing. At least I didn't have to dry the laundry in the room. There was almost no furniture in the room. Aside from the counter and closet that were already part of the room, there were only 2 sockets and a fluorescent lamp on the ceiling. There was only a low table sitting in the middle of the room, giving people a feeling of loneliness. I took off my sneakers at the entrance and stepped on the tatami-like floor. This novel experience finally made me, Rue, a 16-year-old high school student, feel like I had left home. I struggled to drag the large suitcase behind me into the room and casually placed it in a corner. I laid on the floor and lazily stared at the ceiling in a daze. The wooden ceiling covered in black spots was the same as the walls that were a mess. It silently told me how shabby the apartment was. But there was no helping it, I didn't have much money on hand. You should know that before I saw the advertisement, I was already mentally prepared to sleep in the park. Therefore, this cheap apartment was a very good place for me to settle down. After all, I was kicked out by my parents. Chapter 2. Yuri not allowed to come back until you change your bad habit of staying at home. As soon as I closed my eyes, the image of my dad closing the door appeared in my mind. What's wrong with staying at home? I muttered to myself in a voice that only I could hear in the hot and empty room. I wanted to take a nap, but the chirping of cicadas outside the window made me unable to sleep. Even though it was almost evening, the cicadas that had been chirping all day still didn't seem to have any plans to sleep. After resting for a bit, I decided to start decorating my new home. After all, there were only 2 days off on the weekend, and I already spent most of the day looking for a place to live. Although I used to play truant to do what I liked, I can't do it now. Third agreement, you're not allowed to play truant. This was also one of the conditions of the agreement. I had to abide by it for the living expenses that weren't much to begin with. I dragged a large black suitcase in front of me. Speaking of which, the last time I used this thing was when we went on a trip to the hot springs. In order to bring all of my home computers, portable game consoles, and game software, I had to drag such a large suitcase. Now that I think about it, I was too weak in the past. That's right, the current me has already thrown away that cowardice. I've become a man that can live without a game console as long as there's the internet. Of course, because I was kicked out this time, my mom was watching over my game console and personal computer, so I couldn't bring them out. However, my stupid mother, you definitely don't know that the world has already entered the era of tablet computers, right? Before I came out, I secretly stuffed the tablet into the suitcase. When I asked the landlord for the keys, I already confirmed that there was a public Wi-Fi that tenants can use. Although it would be a bit slow and the internet would be a bit laggy, it was a small problem that I could endure. Without my mom and dad controlling me, I could naturally play with the computer to my heart's content. I reached my hand into the suitcase and felt around for a long time. My fingers finally confirmed the feeling of a hard square object. I happily pulled the object out of the suitcase. Good, I'll play League Girl for a bit before I continue to organize. Then the thing that appeared in front of me was a cutting board. I wiped my eyes. I must have taken it out in the wrong way. That's right, the chopping board must be my imagination. No matter what, I wouldn't put something I didn't need in my suitcase. After thinking about it, I put the chopping board back into my suitcase. Then, I leaned my feet against the wall and did a handstand. At the same time, I focused on my dantian and pulled the chopping board out. The thing that appeared in front of me this time was a chopping board still stained with bits of cabbage leaves. Why? I slammed the chopping board on the low table. Where did my tablet go? At this time, I noticed that there was a piece of paper taped to the back of the chopping board. Your tablet has already fallen into our hands. If you want it to be safe and not be killed, then obediently do as we say. Love your father and mother. A notice about a kidnapper? No, that's not what I should be surprised about. Who would have thought that even my final line of defense would be discovered by them? Looks like this battle is far more difficult than I thought. I let out a long sigh and let out some of the stuffiness in my chest, then I continued to organize the things in my suitcase. Other than clothes and some daily necessities, the suitcase was mostly filled with textbooks and extracurricular reference books. Oh! Speaking of which, I even brought this out. Picking up a reference book with the title, 5 Years of College Entrance Exams, 3 Years of Practice English Chapter, I showed a moved expression. Although the cover of the book seems to be a collection of super difficult questions that are circulated among the students, and it is said that even the top students would struggle to solve it, in reality, the content within has already been changed by me to a treasure that talks about the essence of human life, bestowing me with vitality, allowing me to raise my spirits at any time and cleanse the depths of my soul. In layman's terms, it's an adult book or a small yellow book. After all, I'm also a healthy boy in puberty. As long as I change the cover to a reference book and stack it with a real reference book, even if it's placed in a more conspicuous place, it won't be suspected. This is the truth that I've verified through practice and time. I'll use this to make a side dish tonight. Cheer up a bit, with a happy smile, I opened the page that can bring me supreme spiritual enjoyment. Then I saw a dense amount of English exercises. And it's super difficult, it's not the kind that I can handle. No. That's not the point. I hurriedly flipped through the pages and quickly flipped through the entire book, but I still didn't see the scene I was looking for. It's gone? My source of vitality disappeared. Calm down, if I think about it, isn't now the time to show my wisdom? A primary school detective once said that there is only one truth. First, I have to find a clue as to why my source of vitality became like this. I flipped to the last page of the exercise book and tried to see how the cover and the page were glued together. As a result, on the last page of the book, words written with a blue ballpoint pen appeared in front of my eyes. Xiao is always so careless. When Mom was helping you organize the book, I found that the cover and content of this book were wrong, so I helped you change it back. No need to thank me, this is just a mother's concern for her son. P.S. Mom thinks that for Xiao, the level of garter stockings is a bit too early. I don't want this kind of twisted concern. I fiercely threw the exercise book on the low table while shedding 2 lines of manly tears. The exercise book and the chopping board were side by side on the low table, as if laughing at my stupidity. Not only did I lose an important source of vitality, I also exposed my sexual fetishes to my mother. What kind of shameful play is this? I can't take it anymore. The 2 consecutive blows already made me physically and mentally exhausted. The sun also began to set outside the window. That's it for today. Dinner was half a bean paste bread left over from lunch. It would be nice if there was boiled water. The dry bread was hard to swallow. Although there was running water, gas was also included in the rent, and could be provided at any time. I didn't have a kettle to boil water with. Or rather, I didn't have any tools to cook with. There was only a broken porcelain bowl and a lone chopstick left in the cupboard by the counter. I couldn't help but feel sorry for the previous tenant. How poor was he? But considering that I wanted to buy BD, game software, and figurines in the near future, I didn't have the right to criticize him since I was trying my best to save money. After eating the bread, I used the hot water heater to take a cold shower and planned to sleep. The bed was a bamboo mat and quilt, and the pillows were my own hands. The floor was similar to tatami, although it was a bit moldy, but to be honest, it wasn't bad to sleep on. There was no fan in the room, and naturally, there wasn't any luxury like air conditioning. In order to make sure I didn't die from the heat, I could only open the door to the balcony and enjoy the cool breeze and annoying mosquitoes. I have to buy some mosquito-repellent incense tomorrow. Late at night, I shivered and suddenly woke up from my sleep. I subconsciously scratched the swollen mosquito bite on my arm, and a strange feeling of being watched emerged from the bottom of my heart. I opened my eyes and saw a woman wearing a white dress. Her long hair covered most of her face, and only one eye was exposed as she stared at me. What caught my attention the most were the 2 ghostly flames floating around her. They were emitting a faint blue light. I blinked and quickly stood up, turned on the fluorescent lights, then sat cross-legged in front of her and began to size up this uninvited guest. The pure white dress was very simple, without any fancy embellishments. This kind of dress had high requirements for the person wearing it, and if one wasn't careful, it would give the wrong impression that the person's skin was very dark, but it complemented her slightly sickly pale skin. Her pitch-black hair, because of her snow-white skin and long dress, appeared even more glossy and smooth, without a trace of dry hair. Although I couldn't see her face, and she was still trying her best to stare at me, but her large eyes and long eyelashes gave off a subtle sense of cuteness. The 2 ghostly flames were already overshadowed by the fluorescent lights. Other than that, the only thing that could prove that the woman who suddenly appeared in my room wasn't human was the slight sense of translucency that her body gave off. Without a doubt, she was a ghost. Wait, translucency? I bent down and pressed my face against the floor. Ignoring the fact that the tatami floor might leave marks on my face, I began to rustle like a cockroach towards her skirt. Bang! Gah! But before I reached the predetermined position, the chopping board that was originally placed on the low table smashed into my face. I held my face and rolled on the ground while screaming, my skull seems to have caved in. Why do you still have the leisure to peep at other people's underwear when you clearly bumped into a ghost? The other party's voice was filled with anger, and it was obviously a young girl's voice. Sorry, I was actually a remnant child who was able to watch Ring without batting an eyelid, and even wrote in the movie review section that, if you look closely, Teruko-chan's figure is not bad, and long straight black hair is a cute point. Thirst for knowledge is the source of human progress. I covered my nose, straightened my body, and tried to explain to the angry ghost girl in front of me. I explained. You're just a pervert. The other party pointed out mercilessly. Don't look down on perverts. At least deny it. Everyone has a pervert in their heart. Don't talk about perverts as things like dreams. When the desire for knowledge in one's heart swells, many people choose to turn a blind eye to it because they are afraid of change and the unknown future. They continue to live a life that has not changed at all, continuing the so-called stable daily life. But is this really a good thing? Isn't it because of the courage to challenge the unknown that humans can move step by step toward the truth? It's precisely at times like this that we should abandon our past prejudices, face our thirst for knowledge, face our desire to explore something, and face our true self. That's right, it's the perverted self that old man Freud said is hidden in the depths of our hearts. In the end, isn't it still perverted? Freud didn't say such a thing. The last sentence completely ruined this seemingly cool speech. For some reason, the ghost girl seemed to be very tired. She held her forehead and looked very tired. Don't you feel strange that you can see ghosts? Because I've always had a strong sense of inspiration. Although it wasn't something to be proud of, since the second year of middle school, I would occasionally see some strange things. However, even if I told others about it, they wouldn't believe me. Because of this, I was even ridiculed by my classmates for being a chunibu for a long time. Now that I think about it, this was probably one of the reasons why I became an otaku who played truant all day. Yes, it wasn't me who was wrong, it was the world. Huh? Is that so? However, the ghost girl seemed to be a little disappointed. She pouted and muttered, I thought I became stronger. But the guy who used to live here could only see a hazy shadow. It's okay, whether there's a mosaic or not, I don't mind. From the perspective of appreciation. Although I didn't quite understand what she was talking about, I still gave her a thumbs up and showed her a self-proclaimed, hearty smile. Mosaic my ass. Shut up, pervert. However, I was immediately scolded. The ghost girl scratched her long hair. Damn it, it wasn't easy for me to pretend to be a ghost and drive out the guy from before. Why is there an even more troublesome pervert now? No, you're a ghost, so there's no need to pretend, right? In addition, I was wondering why the rent of this apartment, which wasn't far from the city center and had complete facilities, was so cheap. It turned out that there was a ghost here. This way, the second last question in my heart was also solved. Now, apart from the last question, whether her underwear was transparent or not, I was a man with no weaknesses. Using the chopping board as a pillow, I yawned, pulled the towel over my body, and lay down on the mat. Remember to turn off the light when you're done playing. That's it, good night. Don't sleep. As soon as I lay down, I was woken up by the other party. What's wrong? It's already very late. The phone that was charging at the socket showed that it was past 1 in the morning. Most people should be chatting with the Lord of Zhou in their sleep. Although I usually had to watch late-night cartoons, it didn't matter even if I stayed up until this time, but today I walked too much during the day and was a bit tired. Plus, I didn't have my personal computer with me. Although the outdated phone could still go to some video websites to watch, it was a bit troublesome to buffer, so I decided to leave the cartoons until tomorrow. It's obvious that your reaction is too strange. Hurry up and be scared like a normal person, then move out of this room. Otherwise, I'll make trouble for you. The ghost girl stuck out her dark red tongue. She probably wanted to pretend to be a hanged ghost and float around me. Are you talking about that thing just now? I pointed to the chopping board that still smelled like cabbage under my head. Just now, she only waved her hand, and the chopping board jumped up from the low table like a bullet and hit my head. He, that's right. How is it? Are you scared now? She puffed up her chest that still had some lingering thoughts, and her tone was filled with pride as she spoke. Good night. I laid back down on the mat. You're not allowed to sleep. Don't you feel scared at all? Of course not, because you can't use that ability too many times, right? I managed to half open my eyes and yawned loudly. How did you know? No, you're joking. This level of ability. Because after you used that, your soul became a bit lighter? No, it's that your body became a bit more transparent. I waved my hand, wanting to drive away the mosquitoes that were buzzing around my ears. Maybe it was because they were attracted by the light, the number of these guys became more than before. This means that ability also consumes your energy, so you can't use it without limit. I often write some guides and submit them to game magazines to earn some extra money, so I have a certain amount of confidence in my insight and judgment. And the other party's words and actions before also proved that my guess was not wrong. Then that's it, good night. After the explanation, while the ghost girl was still stunned and didn't know what to say, I shrank back into the blanket and tried to use the thin towel to block the mosquitoes' attacks. So, say it. Don't sleep. The specter girl screamed in my ear, giving me the illusion that my eardrums were about to burst. What do you want? Even if I had a good temper, I would still get annoyed if my sleep was disturbed again and again. Even Buddha could only endure 3 times. That's what I want to say. The eye that peeked out from behind her hair stared at me. What do you want in order for you to move out of this room? After looking at her for a few seconds, I sighed. It seems that if I don't make it clear, you won't let me sleep tonight. Of course. She nodded without hesitation. Since you said so. I took a deep breath. Yes, yes. The ghost girl also had a serious expression as she waited for me to continue. Speaking of which, the sentence, "you won't let me sleep tonight," sounds a little obscene. Give me something like that. The ghost girl, who was listening to me attentively, staggered and almost fell from the air. How about this kind of boring thing? Sorry, I accidentally let the pervert in my heart come out. I coughed awkwardly. The ghost girl continued to glare at me with murderous eyes. So scary. I should be more serious. I sat upright in front of the ghost girl and tried my best to show a serious expression. Let me become a cash cow. What? Please let me become a winner in life. I want to become the new world's harem god. Chapter 3. Walking out of the convenience store with a shopping bag, I yawned loudly. Although it was still morning, the summer sun still exuded a frightening lethality. Especially after enjoying the free air conditioning in the convenience store for a while, the lethality of the temperature difference was even stronger. Standing next to the busy road, the ordinary atmosphere of daily life was so close to me that I even had the misconception that my conversation with the ghost girl last night was just a dream. Let's go back. Wiping the sweat from my forehead, I had already dispelled the unrealistic idea of taking a detour to the nearby ACG store. I walked straight to the old apartment across the road. Unlike yesterday, the door lock was easily unlocked by me. I'm back. You're not welcome here, get out. As a result, I was met with harsh words as soon as I arrived home. The earthbound spirit in this room, the young female spirit who called herself Tantai, had changed into a loose white t-shirt and khaki sports shorts. She looked a little old-fashioned and boyish. Her long, black, straight hair was neatly tied into 2 ponytails, which hung behind her back. This also revealed her cute face, which was not so much pretty as it was pretty. If you didn't look at the 2 will-o'-the-wisps floating around her, you would most likely think that she was just an ordinary middle school student. However, this ordinary middle school student ghost was currently glaring at me with a hostile gaze. How unbearable. Wait until you turn me into a cash charge, then I'll definitely leave, I could only answer ambiguously. No matter how you think about it, because I'm addicted to my hobby of staying at home, I was chased out by my family who couldn't stand it, and I can only go home by becoming a cash charge. Isn't it too strange? Tantai expressed extreme doubt about this. Even if you say that, it's the truth. I put the shopping bag on the table, took out a small portable electric fan, plugged it in, and started blowing. Although there were some other reasons, this was the main reason. Maybe it's because my dad is a so-called successful person in every sense of the word. He started to work hard in society at a young age, so he doesn't like my attitude of staying at home and doing nothing. Then can't you rent another house? She puffed up her cheeks and asked in dissatisfaction. Other places aren't as cheap as here, and you also have to pay a deposit? Mr. Luo, my wallet can no longer support such a large expenditure. After all, my living expenses were limited, and ACG hobbies cost a lot of money. Considering that my tablet was taken away by my parents, I had to go to the internet cafe to do a lot of things, so I had to consider this extra expense. Then go work. Can't Secretary M and Colonel Fried Chicken accept temporary workers like you? If you really can't, you can at least work as a cashier at a convenience store on the weekends, right? Tantai continued to try to shake my determination to live here. I think I'll lose if it's work. Don't act like an otaku on such trivial matters. Speaking of which, why do you want the residents to move out so badly? It wasn't just me, it seemed like my ex was also chased out by her. Because it's troublesome. Sometimes, even if I know you can't see me, I still feel like I'm being watched when I'm doing things. It's super disgusting. She answered without hesitation. In conclusion, I touched my chin. You're just shy. Who's shy at any time or place? I felt like I could hear something burning on her side, and her 2 ponytails were also floating in the air, defying gravity. As expected of a ghost. But if I think about it carefully, is our current situation the legendary legal cohabitation? I hammered my palms. Are you saying I'm already a cash cow? Cohabitation my ass. Also, don't you feel sad living with a ghost and calling yourself a cash cow? I paused for a few seconds, then knelt on the ground with my hands on the ground, and did the so-called frustrated forward bending, commonly known as OTZ, and became depressed. In any case, I'm a damn otaku who would even be happy living with an earthbound spirit. If you feel sad, then don't say such silly things in the first place. Tantai sighed, as if she didn't want to talk about it in depth. Since we're going to the convenience store, then take out the tribute. Tribute? Ah, right, there was such a thing. When I planned to buy daily necessities in the morning, she did ask me to bring some tribute back. After all, as a deceased person, this was the only way she could enjoy some material comfort. Then, the most suitable tribute I bought at the convenience store was, I rummaged through the shopping bag, then respectfully presented the book to her. Go to hell, pervert. Why? Before she finished speaking, the book flew over and hit me in the nose. My injuries worsened, and I sank. Unbelievable. This is blasphemy to the deceased. Why would you do such an unreasonable thing? I don't know if it was because she was angry or embarrassed, but she pointed at me and scolded me with a red face. But, because I was covering my nose, my voice sounded a bit strange. Aren't tributes the most precious things? Then, compared to the buns and rice balls in the shopping bag, a book is obviously the right choice, right? No matter how you look at it, the first 2 are more suitable as tributes. What a strange taste, I mumbled as I stuffed the treasure, a book, back into the bag, then took out the paper bag with the meat bun and the plastic plate. I placed the steaming meat bun on the plate. Compared to my taste, I think your common sense is even stranger. Then, you have to stick 3 incense sticks on the meat bun. What do you want to do to my meat bun? Because I didn't buy an incense burner? No need. The spirit girl gave me a sidelong glance, then focused on the meat bun. She looked happy. Do you like meat bun a lot? This was the first time I saw her smile, so I was curious. I don't like it that much. She didn't move, but continued to look at the meat bun. At the same time, she casually replied, it's just that I haven't received tributes in a long time. I was a bit surprised. After all, as an earthbound spirit, she shouldn't have had the chance to enjoy the tributes of others. Yesterday, I tried to ask her about her life before she met me, but in the end, she kept rambling and ignoring me. It seemed like she didn't want me to know about her past. I don't know why, but the image of Tantai hugging her knees in the corner of the small balcony in this dark room appeared in my mind. She was looking at the bustling streets through the gaps in the railings. I feel a bit lonely. But then again, you can't touch anything, right? Then, how can you eat meat bun? I shook my head slightly to get rid of those thoughts and asked her. Also, I have never seen tributes to the dead being eaten by the dead. It's not really eating, but it's similar to the concept of enjoying the food, or it's the sincerity of the tributes. Well, if it doesn't work, you can understand it as eating the soul of the food. The girl wrapped her arms around her washboard-like chest and thought for a while before answering with uncertainty. Speaking of which, food also has a soul, just as I was imagining the frightening scene where the souls of the food turned into spirits and looked at us. Tantai put her hands together and said softly like in anime, "Thank you for your hospitality." At this time, should I reply with something like, "Simple tea is not enough to show my respect"? From the beginning to the end, she was only staring at the meat bun. Is this how spirits enjoy tributes? I really can't understand. Then, let's go back to the main topic. Ignoring my hesitation, the girl slowly floated to the opposite side of me. The main topic? The color of your underwear? Sorry, I was joking, please don't point the chopping board at my head. After begging for mercy, the topic continued. Although you mean that you can go home as long as you become a cash payment, how do you define cash payment? Tantai didn't have any self-awareness of being a cute girl and sat cross-legged across from me. If she wasn't wearing sports shorts and was wearing a short skirt, I would have seen everything. What a pity. Generally speaking, if you're passionate about a certain activity and have the national competition as your goal, you should be considered a cash payment by sweating and sweating with your buddies. Other than that, there are also things like improving your grades, working hard to enter a school, investing a lot of effort in comics, novels, or even idol groups to debut. The so-called cash payment actually means loving the 3D world and living a fulfilling life in the real world. But I don't think you'll do that kind of thing, right? The spirit girl held her cheeks and sighed. After all, you're someone who doesn't even bother to work. That's right. I nodded without hesitation. I definitely won't experiment with this kind of time-consuming and laborious method. Moreover, if I'm not careful, I might actually become a cash payment. What's wrong with becoming a cash payment? Is there a need to be so resistant? Are you kidding me? That's cash payment? If you casually become a cash payment, you'll explode. Don't treat the wailing of a defeated dog as reality. Cash payment, noun, when exposed to extreme cold or extreme heat, impact, friction, or contact with an open flame or high heat, it can cause an explosion. Please be careful when you encounter cash payment. Why do you make cash payment sound like it's like nitroglycerin? In summary, there's only one way to give people the feeling of cash payment. Ignoring the spirit girl's retorts, I placed my hands on the short table and tried to convey my thoughts to her. That is, it originates from the curiosity we have towards the opposite sex when we're just growing up, as well as the irrepressible feelings that spread from the depths of our hearts because we're in puberty, and it's a unique and pure feeling that sprouts from our hearts. To put it simply, you're in heat and want to find a girlfriend, right? Tantai Nai had an impatient expression on her face, and she didn't hesitate to expose the purpose I'd been laying out for a long time. I just want to experience the feeling of being in love. My purpose is very pure and upright, and it's not as bad as you think. I think that someone who can openly use a book as a tribute has no fate with the word pure and upright. The other party's gaze pierced me. Also, I think that even if you get a girlfriend, it won't last long, right? With your perverted personality. What do you plan to do when the time comes? I don't know. This kind of thing, we'll talk about it after it happens. I thought for a moment, but couldn't think of anything, so I simply gave her a thumbs up and grinned. Because I've always been a happy-go-lucky person, let's not talk about your purpose for now. Anyway, as long as you can find a girlfriend, your parents will probably admit that you're cash payment and let you go home. This way, I won't have to live in the same house as a pervert like you. From this point of view, we have the same interests. The other party seemed to have decisively ignored my actions. That's right, that's why I need your help. I took the meat bun that was used as a tribute, and it was already a little cold. I took a bite and said in a muffled voice, although I don't think it's possible. But have you ever been in love before? Tantai rubbed her chin and thought for a moment before asking. She asked the right person. Of course. I swallowed the food in my mouth and said proudly. TSK, the taste of girls in this era is getting worse and worse. Too much. What do you think of me? A useless otaku who always stays at home to the point that his family couldn't stand it and was kicked out of the house. I didn't cry. It's just that the excess water and salt in my body flowed out from my eyes. Anyway, tell me about your most recent love experience for reference. Perhaps it was because my miserable appearance was too shocking, Tantai didn't continue to poke at my sore spot and started asking about other things. Oh, good question, it happened 3 days ago. Huh? Although a question mark seemed to appear above the ghost girl's head, I didn't care much about it. I sat up straight and started talking nonstop. That girl transmigrated for 1,000 years before reuniting with me after countless reincarnations in the Dragon Canyon. But at this time, the enemies of Hellcrown had already discovered her whereabouts and began to attempt to capture her. In order to protect her from falling into the hands of the enemy, I brought her along as I traveled across the continent. At the same time, I raised my level and searched for traces left behind by my predecessor 1,000 years ago. Wait a minute. Tantai Nai shouted and finally interrupted my narration. What's wrong? The latter part is clearly the main point. I looked at her with some dissatisfaction. The experience you're talking about is a game? Of course, right? Moreover, the later part of the game's plot is super touching. In the review section of the gaming magazine, the game's plot also has a very high score. It's definitely a masterpiece. For some reason, after I finished speaking, Tantai Nai covered her head and revealed an expression that said, "This idiot is hopeless. This pervert is hopeless." Why? Although it was slightly different from what I guessed, it was still quite hurtful to hear it said so directly. Who asked about your love experience in the game? I'm talking about reality. I'm not interested in games like the 3D world. If you're not, then be honest and tell me. Don't act like a child and say such sulky words. She leaned on the short table with a tired expression. I didn't expect you to be such an idiot. I'm already starting to worry about the problems in the future. don't call me an idiot. Don't look at me like this, I'm actually quite smart. Even if I skipped a lot of classes, my midterm and final exam results were still in the middle. It was also because of this that after several failed attempts to persuade me, the teachers basically didn't care about me anymore. Maybe to them, someone like me was much better than those delinquent students who fought, smoked, and drank. Thinking of this, I took another bite of the meat bun. I don't know if it was because Tantai had already enjoyed it, but I felt that this meat bun didn't have much taste. Ah, she enjoyed this tribute and then I ate it. In a sense, it was an indirect kiss, right? What's wrong? Why are you so surprised? The spectral girl raised her head and looked at me. Nothing, I just thought of something. What is it? Even if you ask me that, I scratched my head in distress. If I say it, you might get angry, and this guy didn't even want to live in the same room as me, let alone kiss me. I won't get angry, just say it. Does this meat bun count as an indirect kiss? Click, the sound of the balcony's sliding door opening by itself, snap, the sound of me closing the door again with a big stride, tap tap tap, the sound of the sliding door shaking as it wrestles with me. You want to throw me down, right? You want to use your strength to throw me down from the balcony, right? Ah, sorry, she seemed to come back to her senses and apologize to me. Really, since the other party already apologized, I'll just treat it as a joke. If you throw trash down from the second floor, the people below will be troubled. That's even worse. Why am I being treated like trash? Speaking of which, can I really get help from this guy? I spent the last day of my vacation in this state of anxiety. Chapter 4. Sigh, I let out a sigh of unease. It was breakfast time. After eating breakfast, I had to prepare to go to school. It's worth mentioning that this apartment wasn't too far away from Jiangjin High School. It would take about 20 minutes to walk there, and 5 minutes by bus. It's so annoying to be there so early in the morning. The ghost girl who was floating by the side complained, even the tributes have become disgusting. The tributes I gave her today were said to be a famous local product, shumai. However, I felt that the taste was very ordinary. It's good to be a ghost. You don't have to go to school thinking about going to school and sitting among a pile of tributes. I couldn't help but have a stomachache. I don't have the energy anymore. I need to see Nine Eyes' panties to get my spirits up. Bang. Woo. Shumai ran into my nose. If you say this again, I'll punish you. Isn't that already a punishment? You actually stuffed shumai into someone's nose. That's too vile. Don't waste food, the farmer uncle will be very sad. I went to the bathroom to get rid of the shumai in my nose. Then, I asked the spectre girl, anyway, although you said that you wanted to help me, if you can only stay in this apartment, you won't be able to help me, right? I will watch over you tenderly from the side. She said with an expression full of love, like a holy mother. It was filled with the intention of being lazy. That's a pity. I used a towel to wipe the water on my face and continued, I can't find a girlfriend, so I can only flirt with the earthbound spirit in this room. Your words sound like the title of a recent light novel. You're actually not going to complain about flirting. Because I feel that if I complain according to your wishes, you will become more and more energetic. Damn, I didn't think that she would see through me in just 2 days. If I'm too lonely, will die. Are you a rabbit? If I'm too lonely, will become a pervert. Even if you're not lonely, you're still a pervert. I didn't think that you would understand me so well. You're a big man, don't make such a shy expression. My eyes Seeing that she was so angry that she wanted to use her mischievous ability to lift the table and smash it on my head, I immediately returned to my usual serious appearance. But to be honest, if I don't have anyone's help, I'm confident that I won't be able to find a girlfriend even after graduation. And this was to put it in a positive light. To put it in a negative light, let alone a girlfriend, he might not even be able to find a female friend. What you're so confident about is useless. It was still early in the morning, but the ghostly girl already looked exhausted. Even if it's a ghost, it's a ghost still, a ghost. Speaking of which, I remember that in TV or novels, an earthbound spirit like you should be able to attach itself to a person, right? The spirits that attach themselves to people are the spirits behind them or the spirits that possess them. To be honest, both of them belong to the category of evil spirits. As for me, I'm basically an ordinary spirit that won't harm others. Won't hurt? I felt the foreign object in my nose, then looked at the short table that I was trying my best to hold down so that it wouldn't jump up and smash my head. What are you looking at? That's because you're asking for a beating. A blush appeared on her pearl-colored translucent skin. She snorted and turned her head away. Is there really no way to rely on me? I asked, still unwilling to give up. It's not impossible to rely on me temporarily. The The ghost girl hesitated for a moment, then continued, but this requires you to not resist at all and completely let go of your body and mind. Oh, then let's do that. Wait a moment. Tantai looked a little confused. Do you know what this means? This means that as long as I want to, I can completely do things like reincarnation in someone else's body. Your soul and consciousness will slowly dissipate because of this. Do you know how tempting this is to a dead person? I don't know. I answered righteously. The spectral girl choked and didn't know how to continue. But I know that you're a good girl. Although you're a little violent, I can feel that you're very kind. Violence is just a facade to hide your kindness. What if I'm just acting? Even what I'm saying now might be a trick to loosen the reins only to grasp them better. Then take it that I was blind to have misjudged you. I shrugged and answered without hesitation. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. I really felt that the other party wasn't a bad person. She was different from most of the women I've met. I don't know if it's because I'm a shut-in and a little autistic, but every time I talk to other women outside, I always feel like they're wearing a mask. It feels unreal and makes me feel uncomfortable. No, it's not just women. Many men feel this way too. However, the ghost girl in front of me was different. From the beginning, her words and even her actions gave me the feeling that I was interacting with family. It felt very real. This was probably the reason why I didn't get tired of teasing her. Since you've already said it to this point, then I can't refuse anymore. The ghostly girl seemed to be very happy. She stuck out her chest, which was not very prominent, and said with a proud face, "Relax, leave everything to me. I just have to count the stains on the ceiling and it'll be over soon?" "Oh, right, can you see my memories after I rely on you? If you can, I'll have to ask you to help me." Gah. Before I could finish my words, the rest of my words were smashed back into my stomach by the angry specter girl. She threw the electric kettle that she bought yesterday at me and smashed it back into my stomach. Relying on me wasn't as troublesome as I thought. There weren't any special lighting effects. With a whoosh, the ghost girl leaned on me and became my spirit. When she leaned on me, I did feel a slight weight on my shoulders. It felt like I was carrying 2 or 3 cans of Coke. After doing all this, it was almost time for the morning assembly. I hurriedly stuffed the remaining bread into my mouth and drank it down with water. Then, I hurriedly ran out of the house. Because of the agreement with my dad, there was a clause that forbade me from skipping school. It also included not being late and leaving early. Although it wouldn't be a problem if I skipped school once in a while, today was the first day of the long holiday. It would be unreasonable to be late on the first day. The outside world has changed a lot. Looking at the busy road, the ghost girl couldn't help but sigh. When I first lived here, this road wasn't even paved yet. This road was paved about 5 years ago. By the way, you've been cooped up in your house for at least 5 years. It was inconceivable. Although you can often see people on TV or the news who don't go out for a long time, in reality, they still have to go to the convenience store. Although online peddling is also very convenient, there is still a delay. It's actually very difficult to live a life that doesn't leave the house. People like me are already very rare. I didn't expect to see someone even more cooped up than me. What's with that look? I'm an earthbound spirit, of course I can only stay in my apartment. Indeed, just as I said, even with the internet and all kinds of entertainment, there were very few people who could stay at home all the time. If they weren't forced to stay in a dark and cramped space for 5 years, the average person would have already become twisted. No wonder this girl came out to scare people at the beginning. Other than not wanting others to occupy her territory, she was probably just observing the reactions of the tenants to relieve her boredom. I already said you're not allowed to look at me like that. I'm not an otaku girl. Ignoring the ghost girl who was causing a ruckus, my thoughts drifted in another direction. Tantai appearance is currently that of a 12 or 13-year-old middle school student, but she has been dead for at least 5 years. That is to say, if she is still alive, she should have reached the level where there are no legal or moral problems even if she is placed in the game that says all characters in this work have reached adulthood. In other words, could it be that you are the legendary legal lowly? At this moment, I seemed to have seen the truth of the world. She and I looked at each other in silence for a few seconds. What kind of brain activity did you go through to come to such a conclusion? Wah, I'm just kidding, please don't control my body and jump over the railing. Although this is only the 2nd floor, I will still break my legs. I tightly held onto the railing that was filled with the smell of rust, not letting her have her way. Mom, look at what that big brother is doing. Apricot flower, don't look. The conversation between the mother and daughter passing by could be heard from downstairs. Strange, I haven't even reached school yet, but why do I feel so tired? Tears, I can't stop, but the entire street has changed. I remember that there used to be a tea house across the street. A hunchbacked grandpa and a white-haired grandma ran the tea house together. The osmanthus cake in the tea house was delicious. Next to the tea house was an audio shop. The owner was a bespectacled uncle who played Teresa Tang's cassette tapes all day. His favorite thing was to maintain his precious antique phonograph. On the other side of the tea house was a sesame seed cake stall. The owner had a son who was always worried about his son's marriage. He kept saying that he wanted to sell his sesame seed cake stall to raise money, but he couldn't sell it even after a long time. Tantai looked at the convenience store diagonally across the street, and her expression became melancholic. As expected, everything has changed. There are things that haven't changed. I didn't know why, but when I saw her expression, I couldn't help but blurt it out. Then, without waiting for her to say anything, I started running toward the school. If I ran, I would have reached the school in about 10 minutes. But my goal wasn't to go to the school, but to the mountain behind the school. Hot blood rushed to my head, and I ran with all my might for a long time. By the time I reached the middle of the mountain, my legs were almost numb. "What exactly are you doing?" The spirit girl looked at me, puzzled. I let out a long sigh. As I calmed my rapid breathing, I pointed in a direction at the foot of the mountain. Tantai looked in the direction I pointed. From this height, she could almost see everything. That was my alma mater, Jiangjin High School, which was founded about 60 years ago. Although the interior looked brand new due to annual renovations, the exterior didn't change much. It could be said that it was the oldest place in Jiangjin. It's true. Tantai expression softened. How should I put it? This was probably the first time I saw her smile from the bottom of her heart. I remember this place where I can see the school. It's the same scenery I saw a long time ago. That smile was much more beautiful than the blooming violets in the flower bed behind the school. It made me lose focus for a moment. After the long vacation, I saw that the students on the way to school were all in high spirits. It was as if they were happy that they could see their classmates that they didn't get to see during the entire vacation. TSK, they were so happy just to go to school. So, it was really, isn't your way of thinking too gray? In this way, don't talk about your rosy youth, even your life will become gray. Tantai, who had become my temporary spirit, looked as if she had been through this before. The ghostly girl, who had been very emotional just a moment ago, was now less restrained than before. However, her words had become even more impolite. No, the smell of the freshly charged food makes me want to vomit. I clutched my stomach. Although I couldn't see my face, it shouldn't be any better. Also, the distance from the back of the mountain to here is very far. I thought that I was definitely going to be late today. Just how weak are you? The spirit girl sighed. If you want to date, I think you should first choose a target and then try to strike up a conversation. Then I'll set a small target and try to woo the school belle, Xia Xueyao. I say, is it really okay to choose the hell level without even having the experience of striking up a conversation? For some reason, Tantai looked shocked. It's okay. Look at Amulo and Ikari. They went to the battlefield without any experience and they still had no problems. You brat, even if you're arrogant, there should be a limit. Also, I can't stand the stench of her being in love when she's with the handsome guys in class. You're actually trying to poach her? How evil are you? What I, Roa, like to do the most is to bring down the hammer of judgment on people in love. Stop joking around. The spirit girl looked as if she had a headache. She rubbed her temples. In any case, it's better to target someone who is easier to succeed. Tisk, if that's the case, won't the only person I can choose to be my math teacher? By the way, our math teacher is 35 years old, female, and has been single for as long as she's old. Also, she's so desperate that she can get married as long as she's a guy. It's said that some of the guys in our school have almost been killed by her. Why are the examples you choose so extreme? After I explained the math teacher's situation to her, the spirit girl looked speechless. Because you said to target someone who is easier to succeed? That's not what I meant. Oh, crap, you'd better stop talking to me now. Everyone around us is giving you weird looks. It's okay. I don't have a good reputation in school to begin with. Even if I'm talking to myself now, in the eyes of those who know me, it's just that my disgusting otaku symptoms have worsened. I say, if you know that you'll hurt yourself, then don't say things like that. Lou, long-winded. I'm not crying, it's just that my eyes are secreting salt water to moisten them. Chapter 5. When I arrived at the classroom, I found my seat and sat down. My only best friend in school also appeared at the right time. This guy was called Jiang Fan. He had a long face, a thunderous mouth, and a dark complexion. If he was in ancient times, he would look like a mutant. If there was someone in our class with a worse reputation than me, it would probably be this guy. He liked to peep and run around naked. He even registered himself at the police station, but miraculously, he hadn't been caught yet. Compared to him, I didn't feel like I was a pervert, but a normal person. But because both of us were isolated by normal society, we developed a friendship over time. "Yo, where did you run around naked during the holidays?" I asked casually. The surrounding students also pricked their ears curiously. "I don't like to run around naked. Didn't I tell you that it was an accident last time?" He roared in exasperation. "Yeah, I know. I calmly pushed his face away. Well, since running around naked wasn't something worth bragging about, it was normal to say things that didn't match your heart. He slapped my hand away and asked, "How was your holiday?" "Terrible." I sighed and told him about how my parents had chased me out of the house. "Then, your spiritual food." He was stunned and then asked in a low voice, "It's gone." I looked sad and angry. "It's okay, your brother will help you." I happened to find some good things during the holidays. After chatting for a while, I watched that guy leave. "You guys are really birds of a feather," the spectral girl who hadn't spoken since the beginning said. "It's called being birds of a feather, okay?" I retorted softly while trying not to be discovered by others. "And it's not just us. Except for a few people who already have money, all the boys in our class are in the same alliance. We share some good things with each other. To be honest, this small group was probably the only thing I was reluctant to leave for school. The friendship between boys is really..." Tantai thought for a long time before she came up with a passable adjective. "It's really amazing." I pursed my lips and didn't answer. At this moment, the classroom door opened and a girl walked in. Our school didn't require us to wear uniforms, so most of the students wore casual clothes. However, she followed the rules and wore the blue and white uniform that looked like sportswear. Her ponytail made her look energetic. In addition, she wore a pair of old-fashioned black-rimmed glasses on her slightly chubby face. It was precisely because of this kind of almost no personality that the girl's presence in the class was not high. After she came in, only 2 or 3 girls greeted her. You should know that this was not the usual morning reading, but the first morning after the long holiday. Not only our class, but also the other classes could vaguely hear the noise of their noisy voices. The students who hadn't seen each other for a long time couldn't wait to share their holiday experiences with their friends in their small circle, or talk about the popular TV series. Therefore, every time a student came in, their friends would call them over to chat. Other than Jiang Fan, she was the only one who was as pitiful as me. In fact, Jiang Fan was quite popular in the class because he had a lot of hard goods that circulated among the boys. Of course, being popular and having a bad reputation were not contradictory. "Song Shan, long time no see," I greeted her out of politeness and empathy. The girl nodded shyly and then shrank back into her seat. "Wait, you can actually take the initiative to talk to girls in real life?" Tantai surprised voice almost made me deaf. If it wasn't for the fact that ordinary people couldn't hear her voice, the entire class would have been shocked into silence by this lion's roar that was far louder than the class teachers. Also, she emphasized the words "in real life." Was it my imagination? That's so rude, anyone would know 1 or 2 girls. I said with dissatisfaction, "And Song Shan is my childhood sweetheart." "What, you have a childhood sweetheart?" What greeted me was a second wave of lion's roar that was even more powerful. Not far from me, the glasses of a skinny boy wearing glasses were shattered. Obviously, ordinary people couldn't hear it, but it was able to shatter the glasses. What kind of principle was this? Although this thought appeared in my mind, I didn't study physics, so I didn't think too much about this phenomenon that might win me a Nobel Prize in physics. Her house used to be next to mine, and we were in the same class ever since we were young. I replied in a low voice. I often played with her when I was a child, but she stopped playing with me when I was in the 4th grade. Moreover, she became gloomy and introverted. Isn't that an obvious strategy flag? Oh, you know what a flag is. Surprise, was there such a thing as a strategy flag 5 years ago? It's because my sister used to let me play with her. No, that's not what we're talking about. The spectral girl looked away shyly. In short, isn't it easier to start with this girl? Since she's a childhood sweetheart, we should know each other well, so it should be easy for her parents. TCH, but I want to interact with a girl who's prettier, then you should go find a math teacher. Sorry, I was wrong. Let's go back to our roots and think about how to woo my childhood sweetheart. Don't you have any sense of shame? I've already thrown away that kind of thing along with my moral integrity. I scratched my head in distress. That's true, but although it's fine in school classrooms, Song Shan has always been avoiding me in private. From what you said before, something should have happened when you were in the 4th grade. Do you have any clues? No. I thought for a moment and said decisively. That's troublesome, that's right, that's right. We used to be in a relationship where we could lift her skirt, but now she's so cold. It's sad. Also, we can play doctor games together. By the way, I should mention the genius surgeon Rue. I'm best at palpation. What's wrong? Why does she look like she stepped on a cockroach? No matter how I look at it, it's all because of you, bastard. I was scolded for no reason. That's why girls are so hard to understand, shrug. The first Love Otaku conference officially begins. After school and returning to the apartment, Tantai Nai, who had returned to her earthbound spirit form, took out a whiteboard and wrote on it with a marker. I sat on the tatami and clapped my hands. I don't know if it's because I'm still not used to it, but I felt my shoulders ache after leaning on it for a day. The big-breasted beauties in the anime who say that it's not a good thing to have a big chest, your shoulders will be sore, probably have the same feeling. Thinking about it this way, I felt the soreness in my shoulders lessen a lot. The easiest way to increase a girl's favorability is to accumulate feelings over time. However, this takes too long and it's easy to be NTR'd by the heavens, so I'll pass for now. The spirit girl who had changed her clothes back into a white dress explained seriously. I also pretended to be engrossed in my studies, and at the same time, I secretly bent down to see the truth of the universe hidden under her dress. Considering that her favorability towards you is very likely to be in the negative right now, you might be able to borrow a certain God's theory and continue to deepen her bad impression of you. When you reach a certain threshold, you can use a decisive reversal of events. The advantage of doing this is that you don't have to act, you just have to continue acting as perverted as you are now. At the end, the chopping board once again smashed me to the ground with the spirit girl's anger. I raised my trembling hand and asked, "It seems quite simple, this kind of simple and easy to understand is more suitable for me." "Oh right, what's the disadvantage?" "The disadvantage is that if you don't handle it well, it's very easy to end up with a chopping board." "Ah, but a bad end for a pervert like you might be a happy end for the world." "I object. How could such an honest and upright person like me use such an evil method to win the heart of a young girl? This is blasphemy to the word love." "Hurry up and remember what you said 3 seconds ago." The spirit girl had a, "I really don't know what to do with you" look on her face. She continued, "Since neither the righteous nor evil methods are suitable, we can only use the righteous method." "The righteous method?" "Don't tell me it's the kind of domineering declaration in romance novels where you force a kiss on the wall." I searched through my pitiful knowledge of romance novels to find some possibilities and asked the spirit girl expectantly. "Don't mess around, that's a method only rich and handsome guys can use. The only outcome for you is to be locked up in the correctional center, okay?" After hearing the truth of this world, tears flowed down my face. The so-called righteous method is actually the application of the suspension bridge effect. Tantai Nai didn't care about my young and weak heart, and continued, "The so-called suspension bridge effect is when a person's heart beats faster due to danger or other reasons. If there's a person of the opposite sex beside you at this time, it's very easy to mistake this feeling for the other party's heartbeat and develop additional feelings. The most common example is the so-called hero saves the beauty." "I understand. In short, you'll pretend to be a ghost and scare her, then I'll bravely step forward to save her, right?" "Humph, something like that. After the tributes you've provided for the past 2 days, my power has increased. Now I can create realistic illusions to scare her. When the time comes, you can act like you're scaring me away and you'll be able to gain her favor. After that, as long as you do it step by step, you'll be able to quickly accumulate enough favorability. As long as the confession is successful, everything will be simple. The most important thing is that it won't take much time, ha 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 ha." "Wah, you're laughing like a villain, shut up. Whose fault do you think this is?" Due to the suspension bridge effect tomorrow, Tantai Nai had to get enough rest to conserve her energy for the upcoming battle. Speaking of which, the spirit girl was the one who came up with the name for this plan. I really don't agree with her taste in naming things. In short, I once again headed towards the convenience store downstairs. In the evening of summer, without the fireball burning in the sky and roasting the earth, the surrounding temperature was significantly lower than during the day. It even gave me the illusion of a cool breeze. After all, the room I rented was too small and there was no insulation board on the roof. Staying inside during the day was like staying in an oven. If I casually opened the windows, it would attract the invasion of an army of mosquitoes. Even the electric mosquito coils could only protect a small area from the mosquitoes. Even now, the heat in the room still hadn't dissipated. If I casually walked in, it would feel no different from walking into a sauna. "Welcome. The voice of the convenience store clerk rang in my ears. After I nodded at him as a greeting, I walked towards the shelves inside. After all, I'll be staying here for a while, so it was necessary to have a good relationship with the convenience store clerk. Sometimes, they can provide you with unexpected surprises. For example, the arrival of my spiritual food, or the short promotion period of some limited good items. Bento, if it weren't for its existence, I would have probably died from eating instant noodles. There are actually so many of them. Lucky, while enjoying the free air conditioning in the convenience store, I leaned over and compared the labels on the bento in the open freezer. The first one was without a doubt the New Orleans roasted drumstick bento. The second one was more ambiguous. Whether it was braised pork ribs or black pepper beef fillet, I quite liked them both. Tomato beef brisket. There's a new flavor? I really can't underestimate it. Convenience stores have been developing too quickly recently. Then, tomato beef brisket, it's decided on you. As a person, you should always have some adventurous spirit. Anyway, if it doesn't taste good, I can still give it to Tantai as a tribute. Because there seemed to be a bento hunter waiting for a bento discount, I didn't stay at the bento for too long. I took the bento I wanted and a bottle of oolong tea and ran to the counter to pay the bill. However, there seemed to be someone else at the counter. The other party was wearing a very common advertising uniform with the words, Shaoling Snacks, printed on the back. It seemed like he was a delivery man. Speaking of which, there were bento in the convenience store, but the clerk still wanted to order delivery? Was this the so-called, never touch the things in the store, belief? I really didn't understand them. While the clerk was taking the money, the delivery man came to me for some reason. Could it be that he wanted to use this opportunity to promote the food in their store? Wasn't he too professional? Dear benefactor. The moment he opened his mouth, his tone was filled with the thick stench of a charlatan. I can see that your glabella is dark, and your entire body is filled with densine energy. I'm afraid that you've encountered a ghost. I have a Sarira that has been consecrated. The current sale price is only 198. As he spoke, he dug out a plastic bead from his pocket that looked like it was taken from a plastic bracelet commonly seen in street stalls. He didn't even remove the holes on it, yet he openly pretended to be a Buddhist relic. I say, can scammers nowadays be more professional? Do they really think that everyone is an idiot? Well, if you think the Buddhist relic isn't good enough, I also have a Taoist talisman here. It's also consecrated. So, are you a monk or a Taoist priest? Benefactor, you're thinking too much. The so-called Buddha is Taoism. That's a novel. There are many reasons. It's not convenient to explain to benefactor. Just directly say that you can't make it up. I also have a bottle of 9-flower jade dew pills. Hey, you're suddenly demoted to a wuxia level. Speaking of which, this looks like an ordinary hawthorn. I looked at the name tag on his chest. Perhaps because he was afraid that people would complain, this guy deliberately used a towel to cover his name tag. I could only faintly see the word Su. That's enough. Don't try to act all mysterious here. At this time, the clerk took out a pile of coins and gave it to the delivery man surnamed Su. Hurry up and leave, don't harm my customer. I'm just being nice? How can you call this a scam when it comes to saving the world? The delivery man mumbled as he walked out of the convenience store. He got on a small sheep and slowly disappeared from the view of the window with an incomprehensible expression. Does that delivery man always do this kind of thing? I asked out of curiosity. After all, this kind of strange person wasn't something you could meet every day. No, it's the first time I've seen him do this, but he's always been a little strange. The clerk paid the bill for me. Just think of it as warming it up for you. No need, I'll just eat it cold. Since the apartment was just across the street and the weather was so hot, if I really heated it up in the microwave, it wouldn't be cold enough to eat by the time I reached home. That's a total of 32 yuan. You're welcome to come again. I left the convenience store with a confused look on my face as the store clerk sent me off. Chapter 6. After investigating Song Shan's route home from school, Tantai and I had made a foolproof plan. We were just waiting for an opportunity. The next day, after school, I quietly followed behind Song Shan. On her way home from school, she would pass by a secluded alley. That would be the best time to act. For today's plan, I had specially bought a memorial tablet for Tantai to lean on. I had also placed it in a corner of the alley in advance. Now, I just had to wait for an opportunity to step forward and save the damsel in distress. Soon, Song Shan walked into the alley, and I quietly followed her. Not long after, I could see a few delinquents pestering Song Shan. Oh, as expected of Tantai. She knew how to act. At this time, delinquents were the standard for a hero saving a damsel in distress. Things like werewolves, vampires, and Godzilla were too supernatural. Not only were they hard to explain, but they were also easily exposed. Song Shan seemed to be frightened by the scene in front of her. She looked a little dazed, and the delinquent's actions became bolder. Thus, I didn't hesitate and rushed forward. Let go of her. Huh? A brat like you wants to be a hero saving a damsel in distress? The guy who looked like the leader of the delinquents snorted disdainfully. How should I put it? This illusion was too realistic. Even his voice was imitated so well. In any case, after a few rounds, the other party should retreat. After all, it was just an act. However, I had to pay attention to my actions. I had to act more realistically. To be honest, I wasn't very confident in my acting skills. You're so arrogant that you won't even answer us. Looks like we'll have to teach you a lesson. Only then will you understand how precious life is. Behind me, the leader of the delinquents let out a sharp cry. I felt that this guy's acting was too exaggerated. He even took out a steel pipe, a crowbar, and a wrench. How was I supposed to act so that I could defeat these guys with my bare hands? In the beginning, I was indeed that worried. However, in the next moment, I realized that I had made a mistake. Oh! After I used my right hand to take the wrench, I realized that something was wrong. A sharp pain came from my arm. The kind of pain that felt like my whole arm was going to fall off my arm made my reaction slow down. Thus, I was hit by a blunt object one after another. I spat out the air in my lungs due to the intense pain. I couldn't even scream, and could only take the beating. There wasn't a single part of my body that wasn't burning. In the end, I even felt numb and my thoughts slowed down. What was going on? Wasn't it just an illusion? This kind of injury and pain, no matter how one looked at it, was it real? Even if I didn't have this kind of experience, just from the feeling of the wound, I could clearly tell that my ribs were broken, and my arm was in so much pain that I could barely lift it. My ears were ringing because of the blow to my head. I seemed to hear Song Shan's voice. She was probably telling the hoodlums to stop beating me, but it didn't seem to have any effect. Could it be that these hoodlums weren't illusions created by the spirit girl, but real hoodlums? A sense of despair arose. It was like a silkworm nibbling on mulberry leaves gnawing at my heart. Despair slowly spread. Am I really going to die here? So death was such a terrifying thing. Tantai Nainai had also experienced this kind of indescribable terror before she became a spirit and existed in this world? If I die here, will I become an earthbound spirit? If that was the case, I might be able to accompany that fellow and stay here forever. It felt like, bang! A muffled sound that was louder than the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground came from behind me, from where Song Shan was. Accompanied by this loud sound, a violent gust of wind blew past. The hoodlums who were surrounding me and beating me were all blown away by an invisible force. I squinted my swollen eyes and could barely see them roll on the ground a few times before they stopped breathing. I didn't know if they were dead or unconscious. Then, I finally had the time to look at the source of the loud sound, or rather, the person who saved me. It was a young man. He wasn't wearing golden armor, nor was he standing on rainbow-colored clouds. At first glance, he looked just like an ordinary man. If I had to describe it, it would be the shirt with the words, County Snacks, printed on it that looked very familiar. Damn it, my brain felt like it was filled with paste. I was dizzy and the pain that was everywhere was tormenting my nerves, making it impossible for me to think properly. Alright, I managed to make it before someone died. The newcomer walked to my side, then took out something that looked like a hawthorn from his pocket and stuffed it into my mouth. That thing melted in my mouth, and I didn't even have the time to taste it. Then, it turned into a warm current that flowed into my stomach. It spread to my limbs and bones, and it felt very warm and comfortable. Not long after, my limbs that were already numb started to feel pain again. At first, it was an intense pain that made me want to scream. Because it came too suddenly, I could only suck in a breath of cold air. I didn't even have the ability to speak. Don't worry, this is normal. The other person seemed to have expected my reaction and said calmly. I have to say, his medicine was very effective. Soon, I discovered that my tattered body had recovered quite a bit. Even some of the organs that might have been damaged in my body seemed to have healed. My swollen eyes were no longer swollen, and I could see clearly. All of this happened in less than half a minute. At this time, I clenched my teeth and sat up to look at the other person. You are, cough. After I coughed out the blood that was stuck in my throat, I felt a lot better. However, I still lost a tooth when I was beaten up, so I couldn't speak properly. You are that delivery boy. Yes, that's me. The other person replied casually. I looked around and saw that the hoodlums were all lying on the ground. Song Shan was leaning against the wall and seemed to have lost consciousness. What is this? I was dumbfounded. Let's say that I made some minor adjustments to their memories. I will inform the Public Security Bureau about those hoodlums. They will probably wake up in the detention center and will only remember that they were caught because of a gang fight. They won't come looking for trouble with you. As for that girl, she will probably think that you saved her." The other party's face was completely different from the last time they met. At this moment, he gave off the feeling of an otherworldly expert who lived in seclusion. "Well, thank you." I racked my brain for a long time before I finally spat out this sentence. "No need to thank me. In exchange for making you a hero, I will take this." Out of nowhere, he took out Tantai Nine Eyes memorial tablet and waved it in front of me. When I passed by this place, I sensed the Een energy on it, so I took it with me. Halfway through the delivery, the spirit inside summoned the courage to tell me what was going to happen here. That's why I hurried back. Fortunately, nothing irreversible happened. Even if you're really dead, I have a way to bring you back from the netherworld. I was silent for a moment. In the end, I didn't dare to ask him how he could bring a dead person back from the netherworld. "Well, can you return the memorial tablet to me?" Since Tantai Nine Eyes' memorial tablet was in his hands, I tried to negotiate with him. The spirit inside is my friend. She doesn't have any evil intentions. Spirits aren't easy to deal with. Even if they don't have any evil intentions, they can still cause harm to ordinary people. In serious cases, they can even be fatal. Did you think that I was lying when I said that you have a lot of Een energy on you? The other party shook his head decisively. "I've heard about your agreement with her. After this, the young lady you saved should have a good impression of you. As long as you don't do anything stupid, you can at least have a relatively pure relationship with her. In this way, you've reached your agreement with the spirit inside, right? As for this spirit, I will deal with it tonight. But, don't worry. When I said deal with it, I didn't mean to destroy her soul. I just plan to release her soul and let her enter the cycle of reincarnation. In Japanese terms, it's like transcending and becoming a Buddha." I wanted to say something else, but the other party looked at his watch and shouted, "Oh no, the delivery is going to be over." Then, he quickly left the place. Then, I could only see him driving his sheep at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour, leaving behind an afterimage. Just like that, he drove past the entrance of the alley and disappeared around the corner, leaving behind a dumbfounded me and a bunch of gangsters on the ground. Since he said that the police would come to clean up the mess, there was no need for me to get involved in this matter. I tried to stand up and felt that my bones were creaking. Many parts of his body felt numb and itchy from his bones. This should be because his broken bones and damaged body tissues were healing at an extremely fast speed. No matter what, I should be happy that I was able to keep my life, right? But I can't feel happy at all. Although I could leave the gangsters here, I definitely couldn't do that to Song Shan. Thus, I could only support the unconscious girl and limp back to her house with my not yet healed legs. After all, we grew up together, so I knew where her house was. But when I left, something unexpected happened. "Xiaoao? Why are you back?" "Mom, shit, because everything went smoothly, I was careless." "That's right, Song Shan's house is right next to mine." "How did your clothes become like this? Did you get into a fight?" My mother's voice sounded a bit anxious, but this was normal. Anyone who saw me like this would think that I was a delinquent who just got into a fight. "I already said that your dad's idea wasn't reliable at all. Look at how long you've been away from home and you've already become like this." Saying that, she pulled me into the house and threw me into the bathroom so that I could take a shower first. When I came out of the shower, my dad was already home. But unlike what I expected, he didn't get angry, instead he praised me. "Don't be so serious, your Uncle Song just came over. He said that Song Shan woke up, so you can rest assured." A long-lost smile appeared on my dad's face. I remember that the last time I saw him smile was in the first year of junior high, when I got full marks on an exam and came back to give my parents an autograph. "You brat, you didn't lose face for your dad. You can come back from today onwards. As long as you don't play without restraint, I can also return your computer and game console." So that's how it was, Song Shan woke up. My action of specially sending her home was already Song Shan's testimony, so it should be enough to prove that I saved her, right? Although in reality, my actions were closer to suicide. If it was the usual me, I would probably jump for joy because I could freely use my computer and game console. But I don't know why, but I couldn't smile at all. Even when I returned to my room, lying on my soft bed with my phone and 4DS in my hand and my laptop by my bed, I still couldn't feel happy. I never thought that I would miss the hard tatami and the condominium so much. No, it wasn't like that. What I missed wasn't the condominium itself, but the ghost girl who would blush and scream when I teased her. She was clearly older than me, but her reaction was as cute as a child's. She hated dirty jokes, but liked meat buns. She would feel sad because of the changes in the outside world, but would also smile when she saw something familiar. I don't know how she is now. A series of knocks came from outside the door. Xiaoao, your Uncle Song wants to treat us to a meal. Hurry up and get ready, we'll go together. Mom's voice came from outside the door. I got it. I shook my head and tried to get rid of the distracting thoughts. After all, the delivery boy also said that if I were to get together with Tantai Nai, I would only end up losing my life. Dinner was at a very expensive hotel in the city center. Uncle Song and my dad are business partners, and the two of them have a very good relationship. My dad always had a headache because I didn't live up to his expectations, but this time, I did something good, so he naturally felt comforted. He even talked to Uncle Song about Song Shan and me. It was worth mentioning that the current Song Shan was completely different from the old-fashioned girl she used to be in school. She had changed into a youthful casual outfit. Her long hair was no longer tied into a ponytail, but instead draped over her shoulders. Her black-rimmed glasses were replaced with contact lenses. After putting on some light makeup, the originally unattractive girl instantly gave off a completely different feeling. Although there was still a gap between her and the school belle Xia Xueyao, she was at least not inferior to the class belle Lin Qian. So that's why, that old-fashioned girl look was also a girl's way of protecting herself. You're really different from before. Because of my two father's instructions, Song Shan and I sat on the double seat by the window. In their words, it was to bond. At this moment, my childhood sweetheart was looking at me with her big watery eyes. Her gaze was filled with a look that I couldn't understand. Previously, you were like... I don't know how to describe it, but in short, you weren't a decent person. I didn't expect you to be so brave. I have a whole new level of respect for you. If it was in the past, I would definitely be so happy that I couldn't find my bearings, even if this beautiful girl was my childhood sweetheart. But now, every word she said made my heart ache as if it was stabbed by a knife. I wasn't the brave one, and I wasn't the one who saved her. This reputation was completely obtained by betraying Tantai Nai. Even when facing the girl's beautiful face, I didn't have the heart to admire it. That ghost girl's lonely expression, angry expression, shy expression, happy expression, and beautiful smile occupied every inch of my heart. Sorry, I don't feel well. Thus, I took a deep breath and apologized to Uncle Song. Then, under Song Shan's surprised gaze, I left the hotel. I took out the phone that I had lost and then found a map. I searched for all the restaurants in Shaxian County. Then, I called a taxi and began to visit and ask about the delivery boy. Just as I was about to spend all the money in my pocket, I finally found the restaurant he belonged to. You mean Xiao Su? He already got off work and left less than 10 minutes ago. After rejecting the money I handed over, the chubby-looking boss replied, he seems to be in the eastern suburbs, but I'm not sure where exactly. Without waiting for him to finish, I had already dashed out and called a taxi to the eastern suburbs. After arriving there, I stuffed all the money in my pocket into the driver's hands and jumped out of the car. Ignoring the driver's cries of, "Damn, this money isn't enough," I ran towards the road that the other party would most likely choose. A sheep isn't a car, so it can choose a lot of roads. However, from the other party's swift and decisive personality, it's very likely that he would choose the shortest road. Thus, I could try to wait for him on the road that he would definitely pass by. This was the only and final method I could think of at the moment. Since he just got off work, then Tantai Nai shouldn't have been dealt with yet. If I miss this opportunity, then I probably won't be able to find her again. As an atheist, I had no choice but to make a last-minute effort and start begging all the gods and Buddhas I could think of to help me. I don't know if my begging was effective or if I guessed correctly, but not long after, that familiar sheep appeared in front of me. Why are you here? If I remember correctly, didn't you already explain everything clearly? The other party stopped the car and looked at me curiously. That's right, but I still want to ask you to return her to me. Hearing my request, the other party's gaze suddenly became meaningful. Just by looking at him, the other party's terrifying strength made me feel suffocated. My head felt like it was going to explode, and my legs couldn't help but tremble. A voice in the unseen world told me that as long as I took a step back, the pain would disappear. But at the same time, I also knew that as long as I took a step back, I would never be able to see Tantai Nai again and see her beautiful smile. I knew that I was a pervert and an idiot, but I also knew that I didn't want to regret it. Compared to the pain I would feel after losing her, this physical torture was nothing. You'll die, the other party said seriously. If you continue to be with her, you'll definitely die. How do you plan to resolve the situation? I don't know. I'll talk about this after it happens. I clenched my hands behind my back so that the pain could stimulate my nerves and not be crushed by the other party's terrifying pressure. Because I've always been a happy-go-lucky person, in the next moment, the pressure disappeared. The other party's expression became as amiable as before. Haha, I didn't expect someone to give such an answer. Kid, I have high hopes for you. He threw a plastic bead at me. It was the thing that he had lied to me about being a Sarira. With this thing, you won't be corroded by the Een energy. But I still have to warn you. If I find out that you're using spirits to do some messy things, don't blame me for being impolite. Is that considered messy things with spirit papa? I asked curiously. No, it's the same concept as you generating your own electricity. Oh, then I don't have to worry. Why do you have to worry about being here alone? A long-awaited retort rang in my ears. I turned around and realized that Tantai had appeared behind me without me noticing. That's it then. I'll take my leave first. The delivery guy gave me a thumbs up and drove his sheep away, leaving Tantai and I looking at each other. Anyway, let's go home first. Let's go back to our home. I extended my hand to the spirit girl. Really, without me, you still can't do anything. The young girl also revealed a slight smile as she stretched out her hand and made a grasping motion. It was impossible for humans to touch spirits, but for some unknown reason, I felt the warmth of a young girl coming from our hands that were clasped together. That's why, before I become a present, please take responsibility, Lord Earthbound Spirit. Chapter 7. As usual, the bell rang in the classroom and interrupted the boring lecture of the language teacher. The originally quiet classroom suddenly became noisy, just like the vegetable market not too far away from the school. I sighed, and didn't care about the teacher who was slamming the table on the podium and yelling, "Quiet down, what a scandal," and began to pack my bag. The class I was in could be considered special in the entire school. It belonged to the kind of class that many schools would have. It was a special class where all the troublesome students who were difficult to deal with but couldn't be dismissed for various reasons were thrown together. For example, there was a youngster called Chintua who came in through the back door. Even his name was full of rustic flavor. I Ching's trio, who didn't come to class since the start of school, but their grades were among the best. There was also the perverted Mr. Luoao, who didn't have any bad records other than staying at home and could maintain a stable grade, but to be honest, I didn't have the right to scold them. The language teacher wasn't our class teacher, so he didn't have enough prestige. His scolding didn't have the corresponding effect, and the class was still very noisy. "Wu Jiao, where do you think you're going?" He probably wanted to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. His gaze fell on me, who was carrying my bag and was about to sneak out of the class. "Are you not going to self-study at night?" "Where else can I go? I'm definitely going to look at the stars again." A whisper came from an unknown corner of the classroom. Although it was a whisper, the volume was enough for the entire class to hear. That's right, although it wasn't my original intention, but because I often skipped self-study at night to look at the stars, I was also one of the weirdos in the class. "Teacher, I'm not feeling well, so I have to go home first." Since it wasn't the first time I was caught, I replied with ease. I even prepared the hospital certificate. If the other party doesn't give up, there shouldn't be a problem taking it out. Perhaps he was dissatisfied with my fearless appearance. The language teacher still wanted to say something, but in the end, he waved his hand in frustration. "Whatever, since it's like this, then you can leave first." Immediately, the other students hissed in dissatisfaction. The strange voice from before sounded again, "Don't be dissatisfied. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not having dead parents who were martyrs." If it was in the past, I probably would have gotten into a fight with the other party, but now I have learned to turn a blind eye to this kind of mockery, as if I didn't hear it, carried my backpack and quickly left the class. Today, there would be an extremely rare Sagittarius meteor shower, and the night would be clear and cloudless, making it a very good stargazing opportunity. After returning home and grabbing the binoculars, I set off for school again. However, the target was not the campus, but the observation tower located halfway up the mountain behind the school. Although the top of the mountain was also possible, because there was no road and the terrain was rugged, the field of vision was almost zero at night. It would be bad if the binoculars were accidentally broken. After setting up the telescope and adjusting the angle and focal length, I raised my head and looked at the starry sky, waiting for the meteor shower to arrive. The starry night sky was as beautiful as ever, but I started to feel my limbs stiffen. I don't like the stars. In fact, rather than dislike, it was more like fear. When I was very young, my parents worked at a nearby aerospace base. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, my father was involved in an equipment explosion and passed away due to his injuries. After that, my mother single-handedly raised me until I was 12. She liked the stars, and her favorite thing to do was to take me for a walk to the observation tower after dinner. Then she would hug me and tell me stories about the stars in the sky. Until I couldn't take it anymore and started to be half awake, she would gently carry me home while humming, "Twinkle, Twinkle, Twinkle." When I was 12 years old, she was selected as the only female astronaut at the space base. She quickly immersed herself in training and stood out from the crowd with her excellent results. I admired and longed for my excellent mother, and set her as my goal. When I grew up, I also wanted to be an astronaut. In the second half of the year, the space base launched a manned satellite with the intention of docking with the space station and bringing back all the experimental records and results from the space station. My mother naturally became the astronaut for that launch. The launch was very successful, and nothing abnormal happened until the space station docked. However, not long after the docking, the space station suddenly began to lose pressure. Even with emergency measures in place, the damage could not be stopped. The point of failure was outside the space station, and the spacesuits of the 2 astronauts in the space station could no longer be used in space due to a design error after several tests. The danger wasn't limited to that. A meteorite would pass by the Earth. Although it wasn't harmful, if the space station couldn't be repaired in time, it would crash into the meteorite tail and be hit by countless small meteorites. If the situation was serious, the space station might even be destroyed. In the end, my mother, who didn't have time to spacewalk training, wore her own spacesuit and fixed the fault point alone. But because of this, she couldn't avoid a few small meteorites in time. After the fixed rope and breathing tube were broken, she died in the vast space and didn't even bring back her body. When the astronauts who survived the disaster came back, they only brought back my mother's space pen and the diary she left behind. After that, the country named my mother a martyr like my father, and took good care of my life. It was precisely because of this that even if my performance in school wasn't good, and even if I repeatedly skipped classes, the school didn't intend to expel me. The astronauts even came to help from time to time, so my life was quite good. But after learning about my mother's death, the sky that was so dear to me became distant and terrifying. There was only one reason why I was able to persevere in studying astronomy to this day. Even if the hope was slim, I wanted to become an astronaut, and then personally bring my mother's body floating in the satellite orbit back to Earth for a proper burial. For this reason, no matter how terrifying the sky is, I will work hard to face it and defeat it. In the distant night sky, a stream of light cut through the sky and disappeared on the other side of the night like a star. Ah, the meteor shower has begun. Chapter 8. After watching the Sagittarius meteor shower, I went home to do my homework, then took a shower and went to sleep. That was what I originally planned to do. But something unexpected happened. A meteor broke away from the meteor shower and seemed to be flying towards us. Just as the huge meteor was about to land in Jiangjin City and cause terrible destruction, the meteor inexplicably exploded into countless tiny fragments and scattered around Jiangjin City. Although it did cause some damage and small fires, the disaster that I imagined at the beginning didn't happen. Just as I let out a sigh of relief and was about to leave, I suddenly discovered that a fragment of the meteor was flying towards us. Shit! In a panic, I picked up the binoculars and ran down the mountain without even grabbing my bag. In the end, I was still blown away by a loud explosion and a shockwave behind me. I rolled twice on the ground and was dizzy from the fall, then I stopped because of the bushes. Fortunately, there were bushes in front of me. If there were trees, the best result would be a concussion. Binoculars. After the buzzing in my ears disappeared and my body recovered a little, I stood up in a flurry and hurriedly checked the binoculars in my arms. I was afraid it was damaged in the explosion just now. Although my days were not bad, it did not mean that I had a lot of spare money on hand. I had to scrimp and save for a long time to buy this mid-range binoculars. Good thing it's not broken. After carefully inspecting it, I found that the lens was a bit blurry, but it was fortunate that it was not damaged too much. It was cheaper to change the lens than to change the binoculars. What's more, I had already used this binoculars for a long time, so I didn't want to change it. Until now, I finally had the time to check the meteor that fell from the sky. Some types of meteors seem to be quite valuable. Even if the laws of the Celestial Empire don't allow people to hide meteors, but people's curiosity is hard to suppress, so I don't know what fell this time. When I approached the crater, I found that the damage caused by the meteor was far beyond my imagination. Half of the observation deck was directly smashed, and the stone tiles on the ground were mostly shattered. It now looked like an ordinary cliff. Only half of the crater was left, and the other half probably fell down the mountain with the observation deck. But even the remaining half was about the size of 2 basketball courts. There were sparks floating on the ground from time to time, and thick white smoke kept coming out, covering most of the crater. The surrounding trees were also set ablaze due to the explosion, and the incomplete combustion caused more smoke to rise. Even so, when I saw the crater, the first thought in my head was tomorrow, will the teacher believe that my homework was destroyed by a meteor? Cough cough. I covered my mouth and nose and tried to get closer to the crater, but I was still coughing because of the choking smoke. To be honest, the current situation wasn't optimistic. If I wasn't careful, the fire in the trees behind me would turn into a forest fire. There were a lot of flammable plants like pine and cypress in the mountains behind the school, and the fire in the suburbs would probably be enough to exhaust the firefighters in Jiangjin. They probably wouldn't come to the mountain forest to put out the fire in a short period of time. Even finding out before the fire spread would be a problem. If I wasn't careful, I might be trapped in the fire and die in this place. As the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. I felt like I was in the cat's position. It was different from the deep night sky that seemed to suck people in. The meteor that fell to the ground was one of the few celestial bodies that didn't arouse fear in my heart. It was very attractive to me. Just one look, and I'll leave. I muttered this sentence in my heart, carefully avoided the burning trees, and peeked into the crater. What? At first, I thought I was seeing things. But after fiercely rubbing my eyes, what I saw still didn't change. What was in the crater wasn't meteoric ice, meteoric iron, or the most common meteorite, but a shiny silver metal ball that didn't look like a natural product. Although I couldn't accurately estimate its size due to the distance, but even if it was a rough estimate, it wouldn't be much smaller than my head. Could it be the remains of a man-made satellite? Crack. The charred trees couldn't support their own weight, so they broke off from the trunk and fell to the ground. The surrounding flames suddenly rose due to the turbulence of the air. And this wasn't an exception. I had only been absent-minded for a short while, but the surrounding flames were obviously much bigger than before. TSK, it looks like it'll be too late if I don't leave now. When I picked up the binoculars and was about to leave, an inexplicable fluctuation made me stop in my tracks. It was hard for me to describe what kind of feeling it was, but it was as if something was gently scratching my heart, and it was hard for me to ignore it. Even though I didn't have any evidence or hints, I subconsciously understood that this was the fluctuation of the metal ball in the crater. Electrocardiogram? Poison wave? Gamma ray? Whatever. In short, even if there was no clear meaning, I could tell that the ball was afraid through this strange feeling. What the hell is that? It seems that my initial guess was wrong. The metal ball wasn't the remains of a man-made satellite, but some kind of life form from the universe that humans have yet to discover. The reason for fear wasn't difficult to understand. Anyone who woke up and found themselves in a strange world surrounded by raging flames would feel uneasy. I didn't know why I made this judgment, but when I came back to my senses, I had already rushed into the crater, ignoring the choking smoke, and ran towards the metal ball. My motor skills weren't bad. Although the ground was sloping, I still managed to maintain my balance. I rushed to the bottom of the crater and hugged the metal ball, wanting to pick it up. But when my hands touched the surface of the metal ball, I realized that I had made a huge mistake. When meteorites enter Earth, they will violently rub against the atmosphere, creating a lot of heat and even emit light. Many small meteorites will be directly destroyed. Since this metal ball fell from the sky, it naturally wouldn't be exempt from this process. Its surface temperature was easy to imagine. Thus, the moment I came into contact with it, I felt a stinging pain from my hands that was akin to being burned by a torch. Chapter 9. I always thought of myself as a tough guy, or at least I always acted like one. After all, my parents died when I was young, so there was no one to act coquettishly, so I naturally became strong. However, the metal ball that could instantly turn my hand into a roasted pig's trotter still made me unable to help but scream. I was confident that if this scream rang out in the middle of the night, it would definitely wake up half of Jiangjin's people and become a new urban legend. Everyone has a way to protect themselves. For example, if there is a sharp object in front of your eyes, you will subconsciously close your eyes. When a person touches something scalding hot, they will instinctively withdraw their hand. I naturally had this subconscious action, but what shocked me was that my hand seemed to be stuck to the metal ball, and I couldn't pull it off. Not good, my hand wouldn't have been scalded and stuck to the ball, right? This wasn't something worth joking about. I used more strength to pull, but I still couldn't pull my hand off the metal ball. But fortunately, I don't know if it was due to the pain, but the pain in my hand didn't seem to be as intense as before. I didn't have time to hesitate, so I simply took the ball and climbed out of the crater, planning to leave this place. Fortunately, the metal ball seemed to be hollow, and wasn't as heavy as it looked. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to bring it out of the crater. However, the fire around the crater had already reached an astonishing degree. It wasn't easy to rush out without going into shock due to carbon monoxide poisoning or suffocation. At this time, the metal ball suddenly fell from my hand, and fell next to my feet. I wanted to take this opportunity to check the extent of the burn on my hand, but I found that my palm was undamaged, and there were no signs of burns. But that heart-wrenching pain wasn't an illusion. I could still clearly recall the scalding sensation. Wait, could it be that the reason the ball stuck to my hand wasn't because it scalded my palm, but because it was treating my burn? Cough cough, the smoke began to cloud my vision. If I continued to hesitate, I would probably die from the smoke before I could rush out. There was no time to hesitate. I took a deep breath, and prepared to break out. But at this moment, I was a bit hesitant. Whether it was the metal ball or the telescope, they were either heavy or not easy to carry. If I wanted to escape, I could only take one of them and give up the other. As I said earlier, I didn't have much time to hesitate. I made my decision almost instantly. I would take the metal ball and give up on the binoculars. Indeed, a telescope was very expensive, and it was closely related to my dream. However, judging from the previous behavior of this metal ball, it should be some sort of life form. Even if I wasn't sure if this thing would die in the fire, compared to a telescope, a living life was much more worth saving. Although I don't know if you understand, but now, you better stay still and not move. I'm going to charge. Hugging it tightly in my arms, I rushed towards the place where the fire was the weakest. The flames danced around me, and the high temperature made my skin hurt. My hair was curled up by the flames, and the heat made it difficult for me to breathe. The surrounding scenery seemed to have begun to distort, but this was not the most troublesome part. Is this a dead end? The originally familiar terrain became as complicated as a labyrinth due to the broken charred wood everywhere, to the point that I started to get lost. After much difficulty, I finally found a path to the bottom of the mountain, but the raging flames blocked my path, blocking the path. Although I might be able to reach a safer place after passing through this, but looking at the momentum of the flames, it would not be possible to pass through it just by burning a few strands of hair. Just as I was at my wit's end, the metal ball in my hand suddenly moved. It was like the fifth apostle, Thunder Angel, in the movie E010. It suddenly spread out into many polygons, and like a manhwa mirror, it joined together into a huge bowl shape, covering half of my body inside. That itchy feeling in my heart came again. You want me to charge out with this? I looked at what the metal ball had turned into. It was probably a protective shield, and I made up my mind, forget it, if I die, then I die. Gritting my teeth, I charged out with it. As expected, when I charged through the wall of fire, I only felt a slight heat, and did not feel too anxious. After charging out of the wall of fire, the opposite side was a forest that had not been burned. In the middle, there was an isolated area with almost no trees. I did not know if it was designed like this from the start, or if it was purely a coincidence. No matter what, this feeling of escaping from death made my legs go soft, and I sat down on the grass. The bowl-shaped protective shield shrank back, turning back into the shape of the metal ball. This made me feel that this thing was quite powerful. After resting for who knows how long, I vaguely heard the siren of the fire engine. I felt that my legs had regained their strength, so I did not stay here for long. I took the metal ball and left the mountain behind the school. After half an hour, I returned to my home. After my mother passed away, apart from the occasional volunteer and the astronaut uncles, there was no one else at home most of the time. Thus, I did not need to worry about the metal ball being discovered. So tired, half a night of experience made me exhausted. The first half of my life had never been so magnificent. Moreover, this metal ball was most likely some kind of alien. If I found it and hid it, I would not be able to have a peaceful life for the rest of my life. After lying on the sofa for a while, I regained some of my energy. The metal ball was motionless on the table like a piece of art. It no longer used the telepathic power to communicate with me. After observing it for a while, I decided to take a bath and sleep. I soaked the metal ball in the bath water and helped to wipe off the dirt on its surface. It now had a beautiful color that was between metal and pearl. When I thought about the magical transformation it had undergone in the fire, I felt that it had a touch of science fiction. After the bath, I carried it to the bedroom and put it on the computer chair not far from the bed. Then, I went to bed. Perhaps it was because I had experienced too many things today, and I was too tired. Not long after, I fell asleep. However, I vaguely felt that someone had turned on the computer on my desk. Chapter 10. As usual, the morning sun shone through the gauze curtains and onto my face, gently waking me up, the sound of a heavy object hitting the stomach. Oh! Well, it seems this method of waking me up isn't that gentle. My sleepiness was blown away by the heavy blow that almost dislocated my organs. I opened my eyes and found a girl wearing a light white gauze dress sitting on my lower abdomen. She had long, pearl-colored hair that draped over the bed like a wedding veil. Under the soft light of the morning sun, her long, pale golden eyelashes appeared. Her snow-white skin was delicate and lustrous, even giving me the illusion that she was glowing. The white spaghetti strap dress exposed her white, perfectly round shoulders. The right spaghetti strap slipped to the side, making the dress feel like it was going to fall off. It was clearly a somewhat romantic scene, but because of the girl's clear and deep eyes and her almost perfect face, it didn't have any sense of eroticism. Instead, it was like a flawless work of art, making people involuntarily intoxicated. She quietly watched me, and because I was attracted by her beautiful eyes, I forgot the pain in my abdomen and just stared at her. I don't know how much time had passed, but I suddenly came back to my senses. I scurried out of the blanket and quickly retreated to the corner, vigilantly watching the other party. "Who are you? How did you get in?" My first thought was yesterday's incident. But after thinking about it, other than picking up a metal ball, I didn't seem to have done anything. The meteorite falling from the sky had nothing to do with me, the meteorite explosion wasn't my doing, and even the forest fire was just a simple victim. So there was no reason for me to be afraid. The girl spoke in a clear and melodious voice, but her words sounded very dry, as if she hadn't spoken for many years, or she knew how to speak, but it was the first time she spoke, pausing between each word. Just as she said 2 words, her little face revealed a confused expression, as if she didn't know how to describe it and tilted her little head. Her adorable appearance even made me want to gently reassure her that there was no need to rush, that she could speak slowly, or that it was fine even if she didn't explain at all. However, my rationality stopped me from doing such an unwise thing. While observing the surroundings to see if there was anything out of the ordinary, I quietly waited for the girl's explanation. After waiting for a while, the young girl who still couldn't figure out how to explain herself suddenly seemed to have a flash of inspiration. Her face, which had a very slight change in expression, showed an expression of sudden realization. She hammered her palms and pounced towards me. Shocked, I subconsciously raised my hand to block, but she didn't pounce on me. Instead, she grabbed my hand and licked my palm with her pink tongue. A warm, moist, and slightly itchy feeling came from my palm, causing me, who was stunned by her unexpected actions, to snap out of my daze. I wanted to push her away, but for some reason, when I saw her puppy dog eyes, the strength in my hands weakened. Not good. What's the situation now? He had just woken up in the morning, and his mind, which was not very clear to begin with, had completely shut down after encountering so many strange things. He did not know what kind of attitude and method he should use to resolve the current situation. I don't understand anymore. My mind was in a mess as I yelled in despair. Before the other party's pink tongue could extend from my palm to my face, I used a karate chop to stop the situation from spiraling out of control. To be honest, at that time, if the police broke in and saw me and the mysterious girl with messy clothes, then I might have faced the death penalty of at least 3 years. At this moment, I was incomparably glad that I was still a minor, and I have the highest respect for the protection of minors. I'm sorry for scolding you for being a minor in the past. Although I said that, in the end, I still couldn't figure out what was going on with the little girl. Right now, she was obediently sitting at the dining table motionlessly. There wasn't even the rise and fall of her chest. Her appearance would make people who didn't know the truth think that she was a very realistic statue. If it wasn't for the fact that she would cleverly look at me every time I looked over, even I would think that she was a statue. But to be honest, when I looked at her motionless, I had a strange feeling of looking at a wax figure. It's not that I'm a coward, but this feeling is really scary. Although I couldn't be sure, I thought of another possibility: the girl might have been transformed from the metal ball yesterday. After all, the metal ball also displayed the ability to transform yesterday, and I couldn't find it even after searching my room today. Although it was a bit inconceivable, I could only think of it that way for now. "Can I have porridge for breakfast?" I leaned out of the kitchen and waved the spoon in my hand at the girl. "Even if you say no, there's nothing else in my house to eat other than preserved eggs and fermented bean curd." The girl didn't seem to understand my joke. No, it should be said that she didn't even seem to understand the meaning of my previous question. She only blinked her large eyes and curiously stared at me. TSK, although this made her seem a bit more lively and she didn't feel like a wax figure like before, I still felt that the way she looked at me was like a child looking at a monkey in the zoo. It was weird. Anyway, I still scooped a bowl of porridge for her and placed the side dishes in front of her. I also pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Unfortunately, the porridge wasn't pork chop rice and there was no table lamp on the table. Otherwise, it would really have the atmosphere of a criminal drama. After watching me eat a few mouthfuls of porridge, the girl curiously approached the bowl in front of her and sniffed it with her small nose. Then she dipped her finger into the porridge, but it was still scalding hot. She retracted her hand and looked at me with a gaze of admiration as I drank the porridge as if nothing had happened. Did this guy think that the porridge was some kind of dangerous item? In helplessness, I could only give up my habit of drinking porridge from the bowl. Every time I scooped up a spoonful, I would first blow on it to let it cool down before putting it into my mouth. After repeating this a few times in slow motion, the girl began to imitate my actions and drank the porridge. How should I put it? Although I know it's not a good analogy, I felt an inexplicable sense of accomplishment from teaching a dog. Chapter 11. It could be seen that the girl didn't like porridge, but probably due to the power of my example, she still finished all the porridge in the bowl. While I was washing the dishes, I also began to worry about a new problem. I was only a student. Although I had some savings with my parents' pension, it could be seen that I wasn't the kind of person who could squander money without a stable source of income. Not only that, although the school wouldn't pursue me for skipping classes or leaving early, if I planned on skipping classes for a long time, the one who would be in trouble would still be me. But now wasn't the time to leisurely go to class. That wonderful girl seemed to have set her sights on me. No matter where I went, she would follow behind me. She would even imitate my movements. For this reason, I even had to expend a lot of energy to shut her out when I went to the toilet. Even so, I could still hear the sound of her scratching the door outside. If I still went to school like before, she would definitely follow me, then it would really be troublesome. "Oh, please don't let me die," melodious music suddenly sounded, and the girl behind me was startled. She looked around in a daze, as if she was trying to find the source of the sound. I took out my phone from my pocket and found that the caller ID was Walking Pomegranate. "Hello, Jiang Fan? What's the matter?" Jiang Fan, even in my class, could be considered a weirdo among weirdos. His reputation among girls was worse than cockroaches and rats. There were even rumors that he was registered in the police station for running around naked, but there was no actual evidence, so he wasn't arrested. But just like what was written in the contact list on my phone, this guy had a lot of resources that everyone was aware of. Coupled with his friendly personality, he was unexpectedly popular among boys. Although I didn't want to admit it, but the inventory on my computer was a gift from this person, so he could barely be considered a friend, and I exchanged numbers with him. But he had never called me before, so I didn't know why he suddenly called me this time. "Wu Jiu? It's great that you're fine. Do you know what happened yesterday?" "More or less. Too many things happened yesterday, so I wasn't sure which one he was referring to, so I could only answer vaguely. "I think so too. After all, you like to go to the observatory to look at the stars. Yesterday, there was a fire at the back of the mountain. Although the fire was controlled in the end, it still had some impact on the school. The teacher said that classes will be suspended for 2 days until the school passes the safety inspection." Jiang Fan didn't doubt him and said, "You're such a loner. The teachers didn't have your phone number, so I had to call you. It's embarrassing that I have so few friends." I pushed the girl away and tried to look at my phone. I tried my best to use a normal tone and said, "Got it. Thanks. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Don't be so cold. After all, we're friends who know each other's sexual preferences, right?" Jiang Fan joked in a pretentious voice over the phone, "Right, silver-haired lolicon? Shut up, streaking peeping Tom." With a click, I quickly hung up the phone. That's why I hate talking to that guy. Wait, now that Jiang Fan mentioned it, I suddenly realized why I had such a good impression of the girl from the beginning. This girl's element was completely my good side. It's unlikely that it was a complete coincidence. I suddenly remembered that I vaguely felt someone turn on my computer last night. I glanced at the girl who was still persistently trying to get closer to me. Did she look like this because she investigated my likes and dislikes? So I pinched her cheeks. Unlike what I expected, she didn't struggle, but looked at me with a very innocent gaze, as if she was asking me what I was doing. I tried to suppress the condemnation from my conscience and tried to use a very serious attitude to ask her, "Why did you become like this?" The other party blinked, then said in a slightly more fluent language than before, "D-Disc. In the folder, Influence of Seasons and Climate on Celestial Bodies. Silver 1_ piece. Shut up. Ah." I dug my own grave. By the way, this guy really did investigate my preferences. At first, I thought she was an alien who didn't know anything, but now it seems that she wasn't as ignorant as I thought. Instead, she had some knowledge and skills. It's just that the pure feeling of a blank sheet of paper didn't seem fake. Connecting the dots, maybe she was originally an alien astronaut or something, but when she landed on Earth, she lost her memory for some reason. Then because the first person she saw was me, she treated me as her father, which is why she was so close to me. This way, things could be explained. Although I can explain the situation, I still don't know what to do next. If the other party was still in the form of a ball, I could harden my heart and hand it over, but now that I've become a girl, I don't think it's a good idea to do so. I let go of the hand that was pinching the girl's cheeks and sighed helplessly. But the other party didn't mind my actions at all. Instead, she continued to move closer to me with a cute face. Her target should be the phone in my pocket. I thought about it and felt that she wouldn't be able to do anything when the screen was locked. Moreover, if I continued to stop her, I had a feeling that she would lick my phone. So, I simply handed the phone to the girl. The girl took the phone and sniffed it with her small nose. The appearance of a hamster circling around food was surprisingly cute. As expected of the appearance that hit me right in the strike zone. Then she looked at me with a warm gaze. Kacha she ate my phone like a biscuit. What the fuck? I hurriedly leaned over to stop her, but it was too late. She had already eaten the phone in my dumbfounded state. I think I need an ambulance right now and a new phone that I can use to call the 120 emergency number. Chapter 12. The situation was not good. Su Shenqing looked at the test paper in front of him and felt a little dizzy. He clearly knew every word, but when they were piled together, he could not understand what they were talking about. As a hero who saved the world, he suddenly felt that it might be easier to take out the holy sword and fight with the Demon King than to take this make-up test. As the make-up test location, the lecture hall was completely silent under the supervision of the invigilator. Only the rustling of the answers could be heard. Because it was a unified make-up test for the entire grade, plus the astonishing failure rate of advanced mathematics, there were actually many people taking the make-up test in the lecture hall. If he was prepared, he should not be discovered cheating. The problem was that Su Shenqing was running around all day yesterday. Let alone cheating, he did not even have time to take a good look at the textbook. Did he really have to rely on his superhuman eyesight to cheat? But if he blatantly peeked at other people's test papers, he would be easily discovered. He always felt that something was wrong. Should he wait for the teacher to mark the test paper and secretly sneak into the office to change his results? With his skills, it should not be a problem. Just when Su Shenqing was in a dilemma, a few ink ants suddenly climbed onto Su Shenqing's draft paper. Then, when Su Shenqing was surprised, they suddenly returned to ink and formed the answers on the draft paper, and it was a standard print. Su Shenqing raised his head and saw Qin Xingyan pretending to pass by the classroom door. When the girl saw that Su Shenqing was looking at her, she nodded slightly and then quickly left. With a grateful heart, Su Shenqing copied the answers that were enough to guarantee that he would pass the test on the test paper. He collected the draft paper and handed in the test paper in advance. Under the envious eyes of the other students, he left the lecture hall. After walking a few steps in the corridor, he saw Qin Xingyan waiting for him at the stairs. I can't thank you enough. I'll treat you to stinky tofu later. Su Shenqing imitated the style of the period movies on TV and thanked the girl. Why stinky tofu? Hearing what he said, Qin Xingyan suddenly did not know whether to laugh or cry. Liangpi and Jianbing fruit are also fine. They're just snacks. That's too insincere. Embarrassing lack of funds, embarrassing lack of funds. Knowing that the other party was just joking, Su Shenqing laughed. But your ability just now is really amazing. It's just a very ordinary little trick. But then again, I've never seen Senior Su use magic. Qin Xingyan asked curiously, Senior, what is your major in magic? Could it be the 5 elements? Su Shenqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Recently, casting beans to create soldiers and all kinds of laborer techniques seem to be quite popular. Senior, is this what you're cultivating? Su Shenqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Could it be that he cultivates the sword embryo and sword pill lineage like me? Su Shenqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Don't tell me it's the 5 Thunders execution. Something like the Palm Thunder? Su Shenqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Divine divination, no, if that's the case, it won't be so troublesome to find the murderer. Is that the Yin-Yang escape, or something along those lines? Su Shenqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although I don't think it's likely to appear in this era, Senior, could it be that you're cultivating through martial arts? Something like that. Because Qin Xingyan was already a little suspicious, plus the power he learned in the other world did feel like he was cultivating through martial arts. In the end, Su Shenqing could only pinch his nose and give an ambiguous answer. However, he didn't know that in this era, because of the lack of spirit energy, it was basically impossible to cultivate through martial arts. Is that really the case? No wonder you're so good at fighting, so that's why. Qin Xingyan had a look of disbelief on his face. How should he put it? It felt like he was enjoying the fun of hunting in South Africa and suddenly encountered a dinosaur. Although it was normal to be crushed by a dinosaur, it still felt too surreal. Is it okay for Emily to be alone at home? Maybe Qin Xingyan felt that this topic was a little uncomfortable for both himself and Su Shenqing, so he tried to change the topic. She has to go to school during the day. She's in the second year of middle school in Jiangjin City. Su Shenqing scratched his head and said, if it's only during the day, it's okay even if she's not with me. Qin Xingyan didn't hear the hidden meaning in Su Shenqing's words, so he only thought that Emily had a good relationship with him. Speaking of which, Qin Xingyan, where is your Bailu temple? Is it very far? After the two fell into an awkward silence again, Su Shenqing casually found a topic to talk about. It's not too far. If I fly on my sword, I can probably get there in a day. It's a bit slower by car, it'll take about a day and a night because my sect is in the countryside, so it's troublesome to transfer. The city bus doesn't even run for a long time. Qin Xingyan's slender fingers pressed against his lips as he recalled. If that's the case, it'll only take you a day and a night to fly back and forth. That's not too long? Su Shenqing, who was just casually asking, asked curiously, if that's the case, why did you say yesterday that you might not be able to make it back in time when you go back to your sect to ask about the location of the seal? Because the other party has already collected 9 women with all 4 pillars of Een. 9 in the single digits means the end, and it's also the beginning of a cycle. 9 in 9 means 1. Most of the time, only 9 sacrificial animals are needed for the ritual. Qin Xingyan said seriously, the evidence is that up until yesterday, there were only 1 missing person case per day, but there were no new missing person cases yesterday. Su Shenqing thought about it and felt that it seemed to make sense. If there were new missing person cases yesterday, Xiao Jingyi would definitely run over to give him new information. You mean, the other party's unsealing operation is likely to be carried out today or in the next 2 days? Su Shenqing continued to ask. Yes, there haven't been any days where the Een energy is particularly strong. Plus, the missing people can't be imprisoned for too long without giving themselves away. So, tonight or tomorrow at the latest, he should be taking action. Qin Xingyan nodded with a serious expression. Whatever, let's go to the land first and see if she found the guy we're looking for. Hearing the girl's words, Su Shenqing was a little anxious. He took Qin Xingyan with him and walked towards the abandoned dormitory. On the way, the 4-eyed squad leader, the fat guy, Monkey, and the big guy saw Su Shenqing and Qin Xingyan walking side by side and whispering to each other from time to time. They couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. Damn, Su Shenqing, that taciturn guy, is actually the fastest to act. The 4-eyed squad leader exclaimed. The one with him is Goddess Song's roommate. The fat guy's eyes rolled around. No one knew what he was thinking. This direction. Are they going to the back of the mountain? The big guy scratched his head and said in a muffled voice. The fat guy was suddenly shocked. Could this be the legendary wild? Shut up, leave a way out for us single dogs. Monkey roared with a face full of blood and tears. Chapter 13. Su Shenqing naturally didn't care about the wailing of the single dogs, because he was currently a member of the single dog camp. Of course, how others saw it was another matter. Su Shenqing walked all the way to the flower bed of the abandoned dormitory in the back mountain. First, he yelled at the flower bed that had returned to its original state. It didn't look like it had been ravaged by Emily yesterday. However, it didn't work. The green foxtails in the flower bed kept swaying in the wind as if they were mocking him for his useless efforts. Under Qin Xingyan's gaze, Su Shenqing touched his chin and thought for a moment. Then, he took out a coin from his pocket and threw it into the flower bed. A hand emerged from the flower bed at lightning speed and caught the coin under Qin Xingyan's surprised gaze. Then, it tried to dive back into the ground like a submarine. Su Shenqing quickly inserted the coin into the soil and pulled something out like pulling a carrot. Ouch! It's going to break. Let go. Qin Xingyan took a closer look and found that Su Shenqing was pulling a tuft of black ahog. Then, the earth god who looked like he was going to cry at any time emerged from the ground. I was just getting the first victory and didn't hear your voice. Let go, my ahog is really going to break. It doesn't matter if the ahog breaks, right? Qin Xingyan cursed silently. However, he thought that the earth god was an immortal, and his body structure might be different from that of a human's. Earth god, do you have any clues about the thing I asked you to do yesterday? Su Shenqing didn't let go. Instead, he continued to shake the earth god's ahog back and forth. Human, what you are doing is blasphemy and disrespectful. If you know what's good for you, let go. Before the earth god finished speaking, Su Shenqing was about to pull it out. The little girl was so scared that she burst into tears. Wah, I'm just kidding. I'm wrong, okay? Then, the little girl told him everything that she had found out. Even though it was almost impossible for ordinary people to investigate a person without any information, as a supernatural being, the Earth God girl's methods of finding him naturally exceeded the scope of ordinary people. As the protector of this land, she would be able to detect the vast majority of people who possessed supernatural powers when they came to this land. The murderer this time was no exception. However, under normal circumstances, as long as people with supernatural powers didn't have any ideas about Jiangjin City's ley lines, she would be too lazy to pay attention to them. Moreover, the culprit this time was rather unlucky. He didn't expect that in this era where spiritual energy was thin, Jiangjin still had an earth god. She even foolishly chose to hide in a basement. She was surrounded by the earth on all sides, allowing the earth god girl to easily find him. After telling her everything, Su Shenqing let go of his hand. Ignoring the earth god girl who was covering her head, to be precise, covering her ahog, and was about to cry, he nodded to Qin Xingyan. Qin Xingyan took out a handful of cash from his pocket and stuffed it into the earth god girl's hand without counting. Then, he followed Su Shenqing and left the place. When they left the back mountain, Su Shenqing vaguely heard people shouting, "It's all small bills, it doesn't even add up to 500 yuan. However, because the war was imminent, and he didn't pay for it, he didn't care. He rushed to the address given by the earth god girl with Qin Xingyan. That place was located in the suburbs, but it was different from Su Shenqing's Sakura apartment. It was located in a more remote place in the south of the city, and the address indicated that it was an unfinished building. It was said that in the past, Jiangjin planned to move the city center to the south, and this area, which was originally a suburb, would also be included in the new city area. After this rumor came out, the originally cheap land here suddenly skyrocketed. A real estate company bought this land and planned to build an office building. However, due to various accidents, the building was unfinished because of the lack of capital. In addition, the plan to move the city center to the south was also inexplicably delayed, so in the end, the subsequent construction of this building was left unfinished. It stood in the wilderness in the form of a half-finished building without even a window, and was gradually forgotten by people. The unfinished building had a total of 9 floors, but only the bottom 5 floors were completed. The outer walls were already built, and only the windows were left. Even the outer walls of the top 4 floors were half-finished. Weeds could be seen everywhere in the building, and some walls were completely occupied by Boston ivy. It looked very desolate. Su Shenqing even found traces of animals such as rabbits and wild dogs. In addition, if it weren't for the land goddess, Su Shenqing wouldn't even know that this building had a basement. As soon as he walked into the unfinished building, Su Shenqing spontaneously felt like he was being spied on from the dark, and he couldn't help but become vigilant. Qin Xingyan, who hadn't experienced much combat, couldn't help but shiver. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, and subconsciously rubbed his hands together as if he was in an ice house. With his cultivation, ordinary changes in temperature could no longer affect him. The reason why he felt cold now was entirely because the building was filled with a gloomy aura at the moment. Looks like it's here," Qin Xingyan continued to tremble and said. As soon as his voice fell, Su Shenqing's combat instincts suddenly alerted him. He turned around and pressed Qin Xingyan's head, and in the latter's scream, he kicked a black shadow that flew out from the wall and pounced on Qin Xingyan. It was a middle-aged man with a grayish-white face, thick dark circles under his eyes, and 2 sharp fangs that reminded people of vampires. At the same time, he was also a zombie. The zombie, who was kicked in the chest by Su Shenqing, directly hit the wall. The wall, which was of good quality, was easily smashed through like a piece of paper. The zombie continued to roll on the ground before he could stabilize himself. It's a zombie demon. It's really a ghost technique. Qin Xingyan covered his head and raised his head. When he saw the zombie, he couldn't help but cry out, "Senior, be careful. This kind of man-made zombie has infinite strength and is invulnerable to swords and spears." Before he finished speaking, he saw that the zombie demon's chest, where Su Shenqing kicked, had collapsed. It seemed that the inside had become a mess, and the zombie demon, which was famous in the cultivation world, had slowed down because of this. At the same time, Su Shenqing pulled out the exposed steel bars from the wall that had been smashed through. He didn't care that there were still concrete blocks on them. He just twisted and twisted several steel bars together like noodles, forming a twisted steel bar. Then, he threw hard, and the fist-thick steel bar broke through the air, easily piercing through the zombie demon's mouth while it was roaring. At the same time, it interrupted the zombie demon's roar and directly nailed it to the wall. Under this kind of attack that was close to exploding its head, even the zombie demon could only die with hatred. All of this happened in 2 or 3 seconds like a spark from a flint. At this time, Su Xinqing turned his head again and asked somewhat embarrassedly, "What did you just say?" "Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly just now." "No, it's nothing." Qin Xingyan hurriedly shook his head. She put herself in the zombie demon's position in her mind, and then she dejectedly found that even if she faced Su Xinqing's lightning-fast and decisive attacks, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. It seemed that Su Xinqing definitely went easy on her yesterday, and he went easy on her quite a bit. "Why are you so proficient?" Thinking of this, Qin Xingyan couldn't help but ask. I'll get used to it as I fight, right?" Su Xinqing answered uncertainly. "Were all people who entered the Dao through martial arts monsters?" The girl suddenly felt that her cultivation method was too weak. Chapter 14. Just as the two of them continued to search for the entrance to the basement mentioned by the Earth God, a terrifying aura suddenly rose from the ground. Qin Xingyan's pretty face turned pale. No, it seems that the devil is about to break free. It was impossible for the mastermind not to know that they were here. After all, the mastermind had already sent out the corpse puppets to stop Su Xinqing. But now, the mastermind didn't seem to want to hide at all. His confident appearance showed that he had nothing to fear. "Over here." Su Xinqing's eyes lit up and he quickly walked in the direction of the aura. "Have you found the entrance?" Qin Xingyan quickly followed Su Xinqing's footsteps. "No." However, Su Xinqing's words made the girl stagger and she almost knocked her head on the rotten door frame. "Then where do you plan to go?" "Of course I'm going directly to the place where that guy is. We don't have time to continue looking for the entrance." While talking, the two of them had already arrived at the place where the aura was the strongest. Then, Su Xinqing took a deep breath and stomped his foot hard. The cement floor collapsed and Qin Xingyan, who was unprepared and couldn't help but scream, fell into the basement together with him. Qin Xingyan, who was dizzy from the fall, was still coughing because of the smoke and dust in the air. Then, he heard Su Xinqing beside him say in a deep voice, "There's a witness and material evidence. It seems that this time, you're the murderer." Then, the girl looked around and found that this was a space as big as an underground parking lot. She didn't know why the developer had dug such a big basement. Su Xinqing and Qin Xingyan landed in the middle of the basement, a little to the west. Not far away, there was an altar in the middle of the basement. There was a table and all kinds of sacrificial tools on it. Behind the table was a man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s. His face was gloomy, his eyes were sunken, his cheekbones were protruding high, and his body was thin and long. He looked like a gloomy skeleton covered with a layer of human skin. At this moment, he seemed to be shocked by this unconventional entrance. He held a black horsetail whisk and didn't know what to do. 9 crystal coffins were placed around the altar, in which the missing girls were placed. Judging from the rising and falling of their chests, these girls were still alive. Qin Xingyan heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the great demon king had not escaped yet. According to the law of conservation, when someone was relaxed, others would be nervous. Qiao Hui was the nervous one. He was the one with the best talent in this generation's Ghost Dao circle. After accidentally obtaining the inheritance of the Shadow Corp's desolate space, he had already passed the optimal age for cultivation, but it only took him 10 years to reach the level of mastery. However, the ghost circle was harmful to the harmony of heaven and earth. Once he started cultivating, he couldn't avoid being contaminated with corpse poison and death gas. Because of the abundant spiritual energy in ancient times, the ghost circle advanced very quickly. After his cultivation reached a certain level, he could turn this corpse poison and death gas into a whetstone to polish his own skills, so that his skills could become more profound day by day. But now, it was the end of the age of chaos. Moreover, Qiao Hui had passed the best age when he started cultivating the ghost circle. After all, he came from an unorthodox background, so some of his techniques were naturally different from the original version. Even if he was extremely talented in the ghost circle, he couldn't avoid suffering from the corpse poison and death gas. Seeing that his cultivation was insufficient and his life was about to end, he could only travel all over the world to find a way to prolong his life and relieve this pain. Then, when he passed by Jiangjin, he heard a call from the other side of the world. The call that resonated with his technique made Qiao Hui very curious, and he began to investigate the strange things that happened in Jiangjin in the cultivation world. In the end, he found that there was a predecessor in the Ghost Circle who opened the entrance to the underworld on this land. According to seniority, the predecessor who could be considered his ancestor even used his physical body to sneak into the underworld to seize the power of 100 ghosts. This kind of cultivation could be considered shocking in today's world. If it was that ancestor, he might be able to solve his body's predicament. This hope, coupled with the influence of the call from the unseen, made Xiao Hui finally make up his mind. He didn't hesitate to risk being discovered by the people of the secular world and being surrounded by people of the righteous path to sneak into Jiangjin to undo the seal of his ancestor. Xiao Hui, who had started cultivating in his 30s and had been cultivating for more than 10 years, was naturally much calmer and more cunning than that little girl Qin Xingyan. When he did things, he didn't have any loopholes. Walking 100 steps and half 90, since he had already reached the final step, naturally he could not afford to make any mistakes. He had set up restrictions all around this basement, and had also worked tirelessly to reinforce the walls and ceiling again and again. He was confident that even if a righteous faction person whose cultivation was higher than his by a level came, he would be able to resist for a while. But he didn't expect that it would be trampled by someone, but now it was too late. Xiao Hui, who came back to his senses, fiercely smashed the horsetail whisk in his hand on the table. With a loud bang, the basement shook violently, and the momentum that filled the entire basement surged. Finally, under Qin Xingyan's incredulous gaze, a purple flame appeared behind Xiao Hui out of thin air. Xiao Hui turned around and respectfully knelt in front of the flame. Disciple, the 18th generation successor of the Ghost Circle, respectfully requests the ancestor to come out. The purple flame jumped, and finally expanded with a whoosh, forming an arched door. Oh? It's already the 18th generation? An old voice came from the arched door formed by the flame. Qin Xingyan wanted to use her sword to disperse the flame before the other party came out, but she found that her whole body was trembling uncontrollably, and her forehead was covered with cold sweat. Not to mention controlling the sword, even stabilizing her mind was exceptionally difficult. The devil's cultivation was so high that it was terrifying. He didn't even show his face. Separated by the two worlds, Qin Xingyan, who was at least one of the top 5 masters of the younger generation of the cultivation world, couldn't even move a finger. This was no longer a problem of kicking an iron plate. Even if she took out a titanium alloy plate, it would be a big difference. At the very least, it should be at the level of Star Dark Iron, Gundam Alloy, or Oricha Steel, the human world, long time no see. With this sigh, the great devil finally came out of the arched door of flame. Different from the shriveled and thin old man Qin Xingyan had imagined at first, the other party's figure was extremely burly, as tall as 2 people, but his appearance was terrifying, as if he had come out of a nightmare. His head was completely devoid of human shape, only a pure skeleton. The broken white tendons on his neck hung down unevenly, and for some reason, his jaw was long, and his mouth was T-shaped. His whole body was festering rotten flesh with thick dark red juice flowing out. Many parts of his body were hollowed out, and from those places, one could even see the rotten internal organs inside. Some of the rotten flesh was wrapped in a layer of hard skin that was black and shiny like an insect's shell, full of bumps. The rotten flesh didn't grow well, and with every step, a part of it would fall off with thick juice. If one looked carefully, one could even see maggot-like worms wriggling in the rotten flesh. Just looking at it made one's hair stand on end. Qin Xingyan didn't know whether it was because he was frightened by the other party's appearance, or because he was overwhelmed by the other party's increasingly powerful momentum that had even produced black clouds. He suddenly knelt on the ground, gritting his teeth to keep himself from falling completely to the ground. Ancestor, this. Even Xiao Hui was frightened by the appearance of the devil, and he was a little incoherent. Obviously, this was different from what he had imagined. Don't be afraid. All creatures in the world are like this. The flesh is just a bag of skin, and the soul is the true meaning. The devil, or rather, the monster turned around and looked at Xiao Hui with empty eye sockets, making the latter involuntarily shiver. That's a lie. In fact, you're already dead, aren't you? Su Xinqing's sudden words made the monster turn around. He bared his 3-petaled jaw full of sharp teeth and stared at Su Xinqing and the others. I didn't expect to find flesh and blood as soon as I returned to the human world, and it's a cultivator. It seems that the damned heavens have treated me well. Qin Xingyan felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Chapter 15. Unlike Qin Xingyan, Su Xinqing had been watching everything in front of him speechlessly since the beginning. From the beginning, he was mentally prepared for a tough fight. However, when the other party really appeared, He realized that the seemingly arrogant guy seemed to be quite weak. Putting aside the galaxy cannon that was mounted on the planet fortress during the Civil War in Centaurus, it almost blew up the cloud scales and blasted Su Shinching into the star and burned him to ashes. Even the 4 heavenly kings, in fact, there were 5 of them, under the command of the Demon King in the Otherworld, seemed to be much stronger than this guy. I can't be careless. Maybe people with extraordinary powers on Earth would hide their strength and pretend to be weak to eat the tiger. Seeing Qin Xingyan's expression that said, F***ck, I'm dead this time, Su Shinching secretly warned himself. Anyway, let's test it first, he muttered, then waved his hand and summoned his weapon from the Otherworld. Holy sword, Rolander. Still want to struggle? It's okay, the more intense the struggle, the greater the fluctuation in your heart, and the more delicious it will be in your mouth. Seeing a long sword that didn't even have a trace of spiritual light suddenly appear in Su Shinching's hand, the monster hissed and strode toward the two. Its existence was so terrifying and huge that every step it took made the entire basement tremble. The reinforced concrete pillars that supported the basement in front of it were easily smashed into pieces as if they were tofu. They didn't even hinder its steps for a second. At this moment, Su Shinching waved the long sword in his hand horizontally at the monster that was at least 20 meters away from him. The next moment, the world was cut in half. With the place where Su Shinching waved the sword as the boundary, the entire space was cut in half horizontally, and even the upper and lower parts were dislocated. Before the people present could understand what happened, the error-correcting ability of the world's laws pieced the dislocated space back together. However, only one existence remained in the state of dislocation. It was the monster that Su Shinching had chosen as his target. Time seemed to have stopped for it as it maintained its striding motion. Its upper body and lower body were dislocated by about half a meter. Together with its terrifying presence and pressure, it was cut in half by Su Shinching's ordinary swing of the sword. Even though it had tempered itself in the Yellow Springs for 100 years and possessed a soul that was almost indestructible, it was still as fragile as paper before this sword that could even cut open the world. It was completely crushed and destroyed. All of this happened so quickly that it did not even have the chance to scream. A moment later, the dislocated body that had lost its vitality collapsed like a statue, shattering into pieces on the ground. Ah, Su Shinching's face twitched. So that guy was a real hoe and not a wolf in sheep's clothing. In addition, even though he had not taken the initiative to train recently, his destructive power seemed to have increased again. If this continued, it would not be good. Impossible. How is this possible? The one who was the most shocked was naturally Qiao Hui, who had achieved nothing. He was certain that his ancestor, who had fallen into the devil's path or even become a demon, was definitely not a fake. It seemed to be able to communicate with the entire hell path and draw power from the world of the dead. Even the masters who had set foot on the Jindan Dao, who were almost extinct in this era, could only nurse a grievance at the hands of this ancestor. If this ancestor was not afraid of karma, it could even change the structure of the entire earth and even the cultivation world by itself. But what was going on with the guy opposite him? Who was he? What had happened with that ordinary sword just now? Don't come over. When he saw Su Shinching put away the depression on his face and began to walk towards him, Qiao Hui was so scared that he peed his pants. He shouted without thinking, stop him for me. If someone with spirit vision was here, they would discover that a 5- or 6-year-old child had suddenly appeared behind Su Shinching. He was covered in a sickly green color, had no nose or ears, and blood was seeping out of his eyes and mouth. This was Qiao Hui's spirit ghost, and the current situation was generally referred to as being possessed by a ghost. As a master of the ghost path of this generation, the power of his spirit ghost was far superior to that of his unorthodox peers. Ordinary people who were possessed by his spirit ghost would be unable to move and would die suddenly in a short time. Even if someone helped him drive away the spirit ghost, that person would at least be seriously ill. Even if it was a cultivator, once successfully possessed by his spirit ghost, their whole body would feel like it was carrying a heavy burden of 10,000 pounds, and their movements would be slow. However, Su Shinching seemed to feel nothing at all and continued to walk towards Qiao Hui step by step. One after another, the spirit ghosts crawled onto Su Shinching's body, but they still couldn't slow him down. Su Shinching broke through the defensive restriction set up around the altar with one foot, and came to the front of Qiao Hui, whose legs were so weak that he couldn't even run away. He raised the sword-wielding hand that had 2 spirit ghosts hanging on it and slashed towards the other party. However, just as the blade was about to touch the other party's scalp, he suddenly stopped. Even the sword wind that could turn the other party into minced meat was dispersed by a slight shake of his wrist, and only a few strands of Qiao Hui's hair were blown off. Xiao Hui, on the other hand, fainted the moment Su Shenqing slashed at him. If we kill this guy, we won't be able to explain it to Xiao Jingyi. Su Shenqing muttered, then turned to Qin Xingyan and asked, is there a way to erase his memory of us? Ah. Qin Xingyan, who had just recovered from the series of events, blinked his eyes and shook his head. If it's an ordinary person, I can erase their memory or even fabricate false memories. However, his cultivation is higher than mine, so I can't do it. As soon as she finished speaking, Su Shenqing nodded in understanding. Oh, that's easy. After saying that, he put away the holy sword, found a steel bar, and stabbed it into Xiao Hui's chest. The latter immediately woke up from the pain, but before he could say anything, Su Shenqing slapped him again and knocked him out. Qin Xingyan noticed that the steel bar turned golden in an instant, and then returned to its original color. Alright, now his energy, his cultivation base will be completely crippled. Su Shenqing pulled out the steel bar, and Xiao Hui was once again awakened by the pain. However, before he could even protest, Su Shenqing slapped him again and knocked him out. Even Qin Xingyan began to feel sorry for Xiao Hui. However, she obediently followed Su Shenqing's instructions and gave him emergency treatment to prevent him from dying from excessive blood loss. After that, she began to modify and instill new memories into him. Fortunately, even if his cultivation was destroyed, Xiao Hui's body was still stronger than that of ordinary people. He managed to survive, and Su Shenqing and Qin Xingyan's efforts were not in vain. Su Shenqing, on the other hand, called Xiao Jingyi. Chapter 16. Su Shenqing put aside the newspaper in his hand. The headline on the front page was printed into He typeface, Major Kidnapping Case Solved, Our City's Police Station Adds New Merit, which was particularly eye-catching. He drank a mouthful of porridge, Xiao Jingyi's bonus hadn't arrived yet, then sighed and looked up at the several erratic figures in the room. I say, can't you guys settle down somewhere else? The final result of this incident was that the guy named Xiao Hui, who was a collector on the surface but was actually a ghost cultivator, was arrested by Xiao Jingyi and sent to prison. Because Qin Xingyan modified Xiao Hui's memory, he didn't even remember that he was once a cultivator. However, there were witnesses and material evidence, and he also had part of the memory of kidnapping others. It was estimated that he would either be shot or sentenced to life imprisonment for the rest of his life. And because Xiao Hui had lost his cultivation, he naturally didn't have the ability to continue restraining the spirit ghosts. Su Shenqing also took the opportunity to release them. After learning about the miserable past of the spirit ghosts from the Earth God, he didn't intend to kill these unfortunate spirit ghosts in the basement. Otherwise, it would only be a matter of a sword for him, and there would be no need for them to possess him. By the way, the corpse demon's body was thrown under the sun by Su Shenqing and turned into flying ash. But after these spirit ghosts were released, they didn't leave to find a way to achieve success or reincarnate. Instead, they regarded Su Shenqing as their master and followed him to live in Sakura apartment. To be honest, this wasn't good news at all. The ghost spirit's green body and bleeding from every orifice was simply too frightening. Furthermore, according to Qin Xingyan, ghost spirits were supernatural existences with relatively low levels of mystery, so they were easy to spot. Originally, there weren't many people who wanted to rent my place. If you guys live here and scare away the rest of the people who want to rent, I can only eat the northwest wind. The spirit ghosts looked at each other, and it seemed that they didn't know what to do. Emoli, who was on the side, seemed to have never seen this kind of creature before, and poked his finger with his finger. They were poking their bodies curiously with their fingers. Su Shenqing didn't know if this scene was weird or funny. Su Shenqing sighed again when he saw the spirit ghost's helpless expressions. Alright, even if I have to live here, can't I at least change my appearance? It couldn't be helped. These fellows were only 5 or 6 years old when they were refined into spirit ghosts by cruel means. After they died, they were used as tools and didn't grow much. Naturally, they didn't know many things. When the spirit ghosts heard this, they didn't continue to stand there in a daze, not knowing what to do. Instead, their bodies turned into green smoke, and after a while, they condensed back into their human forms. Unlike their frightening appearance just now, they had returned to the appearance of a 5 or 6-year-old child. Their eyeballs, noses, and ears were in their original places. This was probably their original appearance when they were alive. Although it still looked like a green spot, at least it was much better than the previous situation. Forget it, that's it? Su Shenqing could only helplessly say as if he had given up on himself. Emoli was probably tired of it. He didn't continue to try to touch the spirit ghosts. Instead, he finished the porridge in front of him and ran into Su Shenqing's room like a wisp of smoke. He used the computer to watch an anime that he was obsessed with recently. Sigh, although the number of tenants increased, I'm not happy at all. Su Shenqing sighed. The key point was, whether it was the Demon King or the young spirit ghosts, they couldn't pay the rent normally. At this time, the doorbell rang. Emily, go open the door. Su Shenqing was half lying on the chair as he lazily ordered. Because the person in charge of collecting management fees had already been sent away, there was no need to be so careful now. I refuse. The little girl's determined voice came from the room. Where did this girl learn to be so lazy? Su Shenqing helplessly got up and went to the entrance. When he opened the door, he saw Qin Xingyan, who he hadn't seen for a while, standing outside the door with a small suitcase. Why are you here? Su Shenqing raised his eyebrows and asked. I'm here to rent a room. Qin Xingyan waved Su Shenqing's advertisement that was originally posted on a nearby telephone pole and said with a smile, Senior Su, do you not welcome me? Don't you live on campus? Su Shenqing realized that blocking the door wasn't a good way to treat a guest, so he stepped aside and let Qin Xingyan in first. Jiangjin University doesn't usually allow day students. The rules in the secular world mean nothing to people like us. A small confusion spell can solve the problem. Living on campus is inconvenient for cultivation. Qin Xingyan, who had already been here once, didn't stand on ceremony. He went into the entrance, put on the slippers for tenants, and said, there are not so many scruples here. Not necessarily. I might rent other rooms to ordinary people. Su Shenqing muttered. Then let's wait until you find a tenant. Your expression as if I can't find a normal tenant makes me very angry. If I'm wrong, I can apologize. But senior, have you ever had a mortal tenant? Sooner or later. Su Shenqing was a little unconfident. Seeing that Qin Xingyan didn't seem to be joking, Su Shenqing finally became serious. Anyway, how about staying in the room you stayed in a few days ago? If you're not satisfied, you can change. Anyway, I only have a lot of empty rooms here. That room is fine. By the way, Senior Su, can I set up some restrictions or something in it? As long as you like. Su Shenqing had already given up on this. But let me make it clear in advance. If the room is damaged, you have to pay for it. No problem. About 5 times the market price. Senior, every time we talk about this, I feel that you're a little narrow-minded. You're obviously such a powerful person. Shut up, you bourgeois. You're so rich, how can you understand my pain? I think if Senior really wants to make money, there are many ways. For example, robbing a bank? Why are you so extreme? Please use a more high-end way to make money. Using hacker technology to rob a bank? Although it's indeed high-end, it has nothing to do with Senior's strength. Can you please use a more legal way to make money? Su Shenqing was silent for a moment. Then, he said tentatively, after someone succeeds in robbing a bank, you kill the robbers, and then take their money. The girl and Su Shenqing looked at each other for a few seconds. Then, as if she had compromised, she sighed. Okay, although I don't know why Senior is so against using supernatural abilities to make money, I understand that you have your own difficulties. Speaking of money, rent. Because he didn't want to talk about this topic, Su Shenqing immediately changed the topic. He clapped his hands and opened his right hand to Qin Xingyan, who was dragging the suitcase. Since you're so rich, is it okay to pay for 3 months? Of course. By the way, can I pay with spirit stones? This kind of currency is more popular in the cultivation world. No, please, just use normal RMB. Just like that, Sakura Apartment welcomed a new tenant. Chapter 17. Song Yu walked out of the auditorium in a huff, her expensive bell-hard-soled high heels clicking on the floor tiles. In a few days, it would be Jiangjin University's anniversary. According to the tradition, the university would be open to the public on the day of the anniversary. At the same time, almost all the clubs would perform to the public to show how effective Jiangjin University's spiritual development was. Orchestral music, light music, crosstalk, and some other arts clubs would perform corresponding programs. Therefore, the performance venue would naturally be in the auditorium, similar to a cultural performance. According to the original rules, Song Yu, who had hosted the cultural performance last year and performed outstandingly, would naturally continue to be the MC for this performance. She had also made meticulous preparations for this. But she didn't expect that the teacher who planned the performance today would inform her that the female MC would be replaced by a freshman, Chang Xiaoxian. If Chang Xiaoxian had far more talent in hosting than she did, then it would be fine. Song Yu wasn't a sore loser, but when she watched the rehearsal just now, the other party clearly wasn't good at hosting. Whether it was her sense of the camera or the speed and rhythm of her announcements, they were all a mess. The only reason she was able to squeeze Songyu out was because she was more beautiful. Songyu also knew that she wasn't as beautiful as Chang Xiaoxian. Or rather, it would be abnormal if she was as beautiful as Chang Xiaoxian, to the point that both men and women would be stunned when they saw her. This was also why there was a lot of controversy about the campus belle of Jiangjin University. Songyu was also one of the strong candidates. But once Chang Xiaoxian entered the university, the controversy immediately disappeared, and this freshman became the uncrowned king. To be honest, Songyu didn't dislike Chang Xiaoxian. That junior sister just happened to be in the same dormitory building as her, although they weren't in the same room, and she had also met her several times. From those few encounters, combined with the comments of the other girls in the dormitory about Chang Xiaoxian, it wasn't hard to see that Chang Xiaoxian's personality was very candid, generous, simple, and cute. But what made people unhappy was that the girl's talent was really too outstanding, making people involuntarily feel jealous. For example, in order to maintain her figure, Songyu only ate healthy foods every day. She practiced ballet and folk dance since she was a child to build her body. She would never eat anything after 8 o'clock in the evening. On the other hand, Chang Xiaoxian could eat and drink without any worries. She did not exercise at all. She could even gorge herself on donuts at night without worrying about acne and calories. However, her figure did not show any signs of going out of shape. Even her skin was as white and delicate as ever. The legendary egg-shaped muscles could not be compared to her. In this regard, the girls in the dormitory could only sigh at the unfairness of the heavens. There was nothing else they could do. Because it was a Sunday, there were not many people in the school. Other than the students who needed to rehearse, there was almost no one on the road from the auditorium to the teaching building. Compared to the school, it was obvious that more students preferred to waste their time in places like internet cafes. It's already noon. Looking at the sun hanging high in the sky, Songyu sighed. She walked through the woods behind the teaching building and came to an artificial lake in front of the mountain behind the school. This was originally a well-known dating spot in the school, but some time ago, there was suddenly a rumor that there was an unknown creature in the lake that even attacked tourists and almost drowned in it, causing the place to suddenly become deserted. But this kind of quiet and relaxing feeling was very much to Songyu's taste. As for the unknown creature, it was uncertain if it was a natural lake, but an artificial lake would not have any unknown creatures. If something really attacked humans, the city zoo would have already sent people to catch it. She despised the brains and guts of the people who claimed to have seen an unknown creature. I even brought a lunchbox. I'm really an idiot who thinks too highly of myself. Because her body fat was a little dangerous recently, Songyu specially brought a diet lunchbox in her bag. She originally planned to take time to eat lunch during the rehearsal and not eat those oily vegetables provided by the school. In the end, she didn't expect that kind of thing to happen. Sitting on a bench by the lake, Songyu took out the lunchbox from her bag, but she was not in the mood to eat. She unconsciously used her chopsticks to stir the lunchbox that looked terrible, but actually tasted even worse. She looked at the lake in boredom. At this time, she saw something lying on the lawn by the lake from the corner of her eye. Could it be that there really was an unknown creature? She put down the lunchbox that was stirred into a suspicious paste and bravely walked over, only to find that it was just an ordinary student. But the student's body was soaked, and his head was covered in seaweed, as if he had just climbed out of the lake. What happened? Did he fall into the water? Or an attempted suicide? Songyu's head was full of question marks. She walked to the student's side and carefully poked his arm. Hey, are you still alive? That person suddenly twitched, giving Songyu a fright, then slowly raised his head, revealing a haggard face. For some reason, Songyu felt like she had seen this face somewhere before. Until today, she subconsciously didn't think about that somewhat strange social gathering. Chapter 18. In other words, you feel very unwilling to be eliminated because of the unspoken rules? Su Xinqing asked while chewing the tasteless boiled broccoli in the diet lunchbox. What unspoken rules? I didn't make it sound that bad. Songyu frowned. At the same time, she felt a little incredulous about why she told Su Xinqing about this. It was probably because this person had already seen her lose her composure, and she had never seen him go out and talk nonsense, so she didn't feel any burden to complain to him. She convinced herself so in her heart. Okay, Su Xinqing glanced at her, then, are you unwilling to be replaced because your appearance is not as good as the other parties, or do you simply want to show your face at the party? Why do I have to tell you? Songyu puffed up her cheeks, turned her face to look at the sparkling lake, kicked the stones on the shore with the tip of her foot, and muttered discontentedly. This broccoli tastes as bad as shit. However, Su Shinching really seemed to be just casually asking, and didn't care about her arrogant speech at all. Song Yu felt that the etiquette lessons her parents spent a lot of money to hire a teacher to teach her were all in vain. Now, she just wanted to use her beloved Louis Vuitton bag to throw it at the other party's face. Then, I'll ask another question. Su Shinching, who was full, put down the disposable lunchbox with satisfaction. Do you plan to get back the host's throne, or do you plan to use a more eye-catching way to capture the audience's attention? What do you mean? The lady, who was trying to restrain her desire to hit people, was attracted by Su Shinching's words, and couldn't help but ask curiously. As a reward for treating me to dinner, Su Shinching raised a finger and said seriously, I can barely be considered a bit popular in school, and under my persuasion, it won't be difficult for you to become the female host again. Originally, Song Yu thought that this guy was a bit ridiculous. The program in the auditorium during the school's anniversary celebration was the most important. Even someone like her, who was considered popular in the school, was eliminated. How could a poor student who couldn't even fill his own stomach help her take back the position of female host? But for some reason, when she saw Su Shinching's serious look, she couldn't help but have the illusion that he might really be able to do it. The other option is to give up the position of the female host and submit a new program to the preparatory committee for the school's anniversary celebration. Through that program, you will amaze the entire auditorium. Then, you will be selected by a talent scout, release an album, act in a movie, marry a rich and handsome man, and walk to the peak of life. Su Shinching raised his hands high and looked impassioned. To put it simply, it's to become a big star, young girl. For a moment, he felt that what Su Shinching said before was possible. He was really an idiot. The corner of Song Yu's mouth twitched. She stood up and planned to leave. Sorry, I still have a yoga class in the afternoon. Indeed, there were rumors that there would be talent scouts coming to watch the school's anniversary performance. However, Jiangjin University wasn't an art school. It was almost impossible for talent scouts to take a liking to the performances of students who didn't have professional knowledge. Su Shinching didn't stop her. Instead, he stretched out his hand and a walnut-sized pearl that emitted a faint blue light spun in his palm. The light was so beautiful that even Song Yu, who was used to seeing good things, was slightly dazed. Don't you want to try it? A week later, at Sakura apartment. Su Shinching carried a pile of vegetables and special 5-flower specials back to Sakura apartment with a face full of happiness. Because his hands were full, he could only ask his ghost spirit to open the door for him. The reason why he didn't ask his ghost spirit to help him carry the things was because from other people's point of view, the scene of a pile of ingredients floating in the air was too strange. It would easily attract strange attention. Today's payday. After putting the things in the entrance, Su Shinching changed his shoes and loudly announced, "Let's eat hot pot." Mo Li, who was originally lying on the sofa, immediately jumped in front of Su Shinching. He raised his hands high and cheered expressionlessly. Hot pot. Hot pot. Is it really okay to eat hot pot in the summer? Qin Xingyan, who was coming down from upstairs, had more common sense. There's no air conditioner in this apartment, right? It's okay, we have Mo Li. Su Shinching pointed at Mo Li, who was dancing around the streaky meat. Mo Li, 3-stop circular cold air, constant 26 degrees, plus humidification. Understood. The little girl immediately gave Su Shinching a non-standard young pioneer salute. Then, she started to read. That's right, it was a reading bar. A yellow progress bar was slowly moving on top of her head. Qin Xingyan, who had never seen the little girl play tricks, opened his mouth wide. Looking at this scene, he was speechless. Obviously, he was somewhat confused. Don't play tricks, hurry up. Since they had already entered the apartment, there was no need to hide from the eyes of ordinary people. Su Shinching simply asked the ghosts to take the ingredients to the kitchen to prepare, while he rushed Mo Li to prepare the soup base himself. Boring. Mo Li curled his lips. He didn't continue to play tricks, but directly summoned a gust of wind. Not long after, the originally stuffy feeling in Ying's apartment was dispelled by the cool and refreshing breeze. I'm really getting more and more curious about your master, Qin Xingyan, who was completely unaware of Mo Li's spell, muttered and sat down at the table to wait for dinner. Su Shinching's cooking skills were only average. The soup base for the hot pot was ready-made, so it wouldn't glow. But the good thing was that it was easy to prepare. With the help of the ghosts, it didn't take long to finish. After the hot pot was brought out, the three of them sat around the hot pot, eating while watching TV. Qin Xingyan felt that this was probably what his master once said about the taste of life. Next news, a genius singer unexpectedly appeared in Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration. Her song blew the audience away. The news anchor on the TV was reading the news report very diligently. The screen suddenly cut to the auditorium of Jiangjin University during the school anniversary celebration. A well-dressed girl was singing on the stage, and the audience below were like crazy fans, waving their hands to the rhythm and shouting themselves hoarse, forming a black sea. It was quite shocking, and the fanatical atmosphere could be felt even through the screen. That person's song can actually shake my mind? Is it the innate bewitching sound? It's a pity that she has already missed the age of cultivation. Qin Xingyan, who rarely chased after celebrities, raised his head to look at the TV and praised the singer on the TV. She sang really well. Of course. In order to increase her charm and the appeal of her voice, I gave her the Mirage Pearl, Su Shinqing said matter-of-factly. Seeing the news end with Senior Song Yu being poached by a talent scout, he nodded with satisfaction. It seems that the effect is good. The shock of the scene should be stronger. Then, Qin Xingyan spat the slice of meat that he had just stuffed into his mouth onto Su Shinqing's face, who was caught off guard. Chapter 19. In Su Shinqing's words, Song Yu had reached the pinnacle of her life. It should have been like this. Ever since she obtained the Blue Pearl, her life had been smooth sailing. Almost instantly, she gained an astonishing number of fans from all over the country. Several well-known record companies also rushed to sign a contract with her. Even now, under the advice of her parents, she was still waiting for a good price. But every day, there was an endless stream of jobs. She even had to ask her distant cousin, who was said to be an expert in this field, to be her agent and deal with this part of the business for her. This was an opportunity that ordinary people couldn't ask for in a lifetime, but it didn't make Song Yu lose herself. Indeed, at the beginning, because she was recognized and liked by so many people, she was happy and full of a sense of accomplishment. But as time passed, she calmed down from the initial impulse and sobered up. She once quietly put the pearl away and found that her singing was still beautiful, but it didn't have that kind of magic that crazily attracted others. It could be said that everything she had now was a castle in the air built on that pearl, which made the girl feel uneasy. Not only that, even the star life that she once envisioned was different from what she imagined. Not to mention the paparazzi and fanatical fans who quietly followed her, just the seemingly endless variety of social engagements gave her a headache. Not to mention the filth hidden under the glamorous and beautiful surface of the entertainment circle that could only be discovered after entering the circle. Listen to your cousin, that big developer is rich. It's just going out for a meal. If he's willing to spend money to support you, it will be of great help to your future career. After becoming famous, Song Yu naturally didn't continue to live in the school dormitory. After a day of work, she returned to the small villa that she temporarily used as a place to stay. Her cousin was still nagging her to go out for a meal with a famous real estate tycoon. She had clearly rejected the other 3 times, but the other party still pestered her. But I don't like the way he looks at me. Song Yu saw her cousin's disapproving expression, and the anger in her heart suddenly rose. She didn't speak as reservedly as usual. He doesn't care what I do, he just wants to do me. Then let him do it. Although her cousin didn't say it out loud, the expression on her face revealed this sentence without a doubt. Song Yu suddenly felt a sense of emptiness in his heart. This was not the life she wanted. The girl threw the handbag in her hand to her aunt with waning interest and ran out of the villa. She drove the BMW M6 that she had just bought and drove away from the villa area. Hey, this child. Her aunt chased out of the door, but could only see the back of the car disappearing around the corner. She couldn't help but have an expression of disappointment on her face. Without knowing why, Song Yu subconsciously drove to Jiangjin University's campus. Fortunately, it was still class time. Other than the field, there was almost no one on campus. She walked through the small forest and returned to the small lake where everything had started. The artificial lake was still the same as before. The gentle breeze stirred up the sparkling waves and brought about a cool airflow, dispelling the summer heat around the lake. A small patch of lotus flowers that someone had planted in the middle of the lake had already bloomed. The peach-red petals were especially beautiful against the green lotus leaves. Song Yu did not sit on the bench by the forest. Instead, he hugged his knees and found a patch of grass by the lake to sit on. She took out the pearl that she had kept close to her body and looked at it in the direction of the setting sun. She had done this kind of thing countless times in the past few days, but every time she would be absent-minded because of this pearl that was as vast and deep as the ocean. The sunlight passed through the blue pearl and cast blue ripples on the girl's face. Song Yu wanted to throw away the pearl and end this illusory and luxurious life, but in her heart she was somewhat reluctant. This kind of contradictory mood made her even more irritable. Found it. The person is here. A man's voice suddenly sounded behind her. Song Yu's hand slipped in fright and the pearl fell into the water. But right now she didn't have the leisure to care about the pearl. She unconsciously glanced around and found several suspicious tall and sturdy men wearing black suits and large sunglasses passing through the trees and approaching her. She stood up in a panic and faced the several men in black and vigilantly asked, "Who are you people?" The other party didn't answer her question and continued to approach. Thus, Song Yu took a deep breath and opened her mouth to prepare to scream. Jiangjin University was after all a school. Not to mention the fact that there were many people, the students were still young and their hot-bloodedness hadn't been worn away by life. In addition, Song Yu was also a famous person in the school. Once they found out that someone wanted to do something bad to her, the students would most likely help. The leader of the men in black clearly didn't expect Song Yu to be so decisive. The girl could even see him wrinkle his brows. But that was it. In the next moment, the black-clothed man who saw that the situation was not good rushed to the front of the young girl and punched Song Yu's abdomen, forcing the young girl's scream back. She could only fall to the ground and hold her stomach as she retched. Although Song Yu had learned some women's body protection techniques, she majored in singing and dancing. When faced with a real martial artist, her flowery fists and impractical legs weren't enough. She couldn't even use them before she was dealt with. "You're actually still awake. I advise you to save your strength and properly serve my boss later." Seeing the pale face of Song Yu's unwilling expression, the leader of the men in black sneered and said disdainfully, "I've seen many women like you who think themselves infallible. In the end, you still can't even let out a fart. You're that developer's person." Because she ran away from home without eating dinner, she only vomited some acid. It wasn't easy for her to catch her breath before she could speak normally. However, her limbs were still weak and she couldn't even stand up. "Seal her mouth and take her away." The man in black clearly didn't intend to say anything more to Song Yu. His expression was grim as he ordered his subordinates. At this time, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in the center of the artificial lake. A huge monster that looked like a clam floated out from it. Several tentacles shot out from the clam's shell and whipped towards the shore. Immediately, a few men in black who couldn't dodge in time were whipped into a bloody mess. They fell to the ground and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Fortunately, the leader of the men in black reacted quickly. He pulled Song Yu back and dodged, avoiding those tentacles. But then, the giant clam's target immediately fell on them. What the hell is this? The leader of the men in black who had done a lot of messy things under his boss obviously hadn't encountered such a situation. He roared loudly to cover up his panic. Seeing the tentacles of the lake monster shooting towards the two of them, he hesitated for a moment before he kicked Song Yu's waist. The girl was kicked to the side of the lake to face the angry lake monster. Meanwhile, he took this opportunity to turn around and escape into the forest. Could this be the punishment for trying to reap without sowing? Looking at the tentacles that were whipping towards her, Song Yu was in despair. At the same time, such a thought flashed through her mind. Chapter 20. In the next moment, the leader of the men in black who had already escaped screamed as he flew out of the forest. He crashed into the monster's tentacle and knocked the translucent tentacle to one side, allowing the girl to escape death. Keeping a spirit ghost by your side was indeed the right choice. Su Shinqing, who was holding a branch in his hand, slowly walked out of the woods. Song Yu's eyes moved from the leader of the men in black who was breathing heavily on the ground to Su Shinqing. Her face showed a surprised expression. "Although I have a lot to say, there are other more important things to do now." Su Shinqing smiled and looked at the resurrected sea serpent. Different from the monsters he had killed before, although the bodies of the monsters on Earth were not unimportant, the most important thing after becoming a monster was the monster core. The sea serpent's pearl was also a kind of monster core. Previously, because it was worn by Song Yu, and Song Yu was protected by Su Shinqing, although its physical defense did not change, because this abnormality was easy to be discovered, it was almost invulnerable. Therefore, the sea serpent's pearl was naturally suppressed and could only be used as a passive instrument to increase the charm and appeal of Song Yu's singing. However, once it left Song Yu's body and fell into the lake, which was the place where the sea serpent died, it was bathed in the sea serpent's demonic aura that had not completely dissipated. A chemical, metaphysical reaction occurred, and the soul of the sea serpent hidden in it was awakened again, making it come back to life. Because he had not killed monsters before, Su Shinqing naturally made this kind of common-sense mistake. Fortunately, Qin Xingyan reminded him in time, and in addition, in order to prevent accidents, he specially left a spirit ghost by the girl's side, which allowed him to easily find the place where Song Yu was. After the sea serpent saw Su Shenqing, the arrogance just now immediately disappeared, and it turned around and wanted to escape. After all, in its heyday, Su Shenqing could kill it with one sword. Now that it had lost its physical body and its strength was greatly reduced, it was naturally no match for him. Su Shenqing snorted softly and threw the branch in his hand hard. The light branch was like an arrow leaving the bow, sinking into the body of the sea serpent. The sea serpent was like a huge balloon filled with water. When it was pricked by a needle, it exploded and turned into countless water splashes, returning to the lake. Su Shenqing waved his hand. Amidst the countless splashes, a blue pearl flew into his hand. Song Yu did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that he heard the unwilling roar of some monster in the lake. There won't be any accidents this time. Su Shenqing swept the talisman paper he got from Qin Xingyan on the mirage pearl. The talisman paper turned into ashes in an instant, and the remaining soul of the monster in the mirage pearl was completely removed. After doing all this, Su Shenqing handed the mirage pearl back to Song Yu. Do you still want it? This time, Song Yu shook her head. I don't think I need this anymore. Don't you want to be a star? Su Shenqing played with the mirage pearl. At the same time, he stared at the girl and asked, if you are worried about being pestered by strange people, I can help you solve it. Now you should know that I have that kind of ability, right? I don't want to rely on this kind of thing to gain false success. Besides, I've had enough of being a star. Song Yu showed a complicated expression on her face. She was relieved and sighed, but there was no reluctance. The so-called stars are often just other people's dolls. I don't want to be a doll. I majored in economics. After graduation, I want to enter a big company and rely on my own talents to reach the top. That's the real success, isn't it? What? Aren't you very motivated? A smile appeared on Su Shenqing's face. He turned over his fingers. The original blue color of the mirage pearl quickly faded away and finally became crystal clear like a glass bead. But if you looked carefully, you would find that there were golden lights flashing in it from time to time. This is a gift for your success. Don't worry. It doesn't have the same effect as before. At most, it can only be regarded as a protective charm. The girl stared at the pearl in Su Shenqing's hand for a while. After a while, she smiled and took the brand new mirage pearl. Well, thank you. Dividing line, the TV was broadcasting the recent hot news. The big real estate developer in Jiangjin absconded with the money. The initiator of this incident was turning the pages of an economics textbook, somewhat bored. The exam for this course was in 2 days. On that day, Qin Xingyan also had an exam, so it was impossible for him to help him cheat. Su Shenqing didn't want to go to school to make up the exam during the summer vacation, so he could only cram for it here. At this time, the news on the TV finally ended and changed to another hot news. Song Yu, the rising star of the music industry who was said to be the most likely to take the crown of the Queen of Music, suddenly announced her withdrawal from the entertainment circle. What is the secret behind this? Now, the experts of this TV station expressed their opinions. Glancing at the several people who were talking on the TV, Su Shenqing sighed. In the kitchen, the sizzling sound of cooking was accompanied by a mouth-watering aroma. Even Jasmine was no longer playing on the computer. Instead, she was lying on the sofa with a starving look, waiting for the meal to start. After a while, the person who was talking on the TV, wearing an apron, brought several dishes to the table in Ying's apartment. Molly cheered and jumped up from the sofa. She flew to the side of the dining table in a way that defied the laws of physics. Although her small face was still expressionless, her eyes gave people a feeling that they were glowing. Come and have a taste. I haven't cooked for a long time, so I'm a little rusty. Song Yu smiled embarrassedly, turned back to look at the TV, and slightly frowned. Why are you watching this kind of boring thing? Saying this, she picked up the remote control and turned the channel to the "You're heartless, you're cruel, you're unreasonable" romance drama. I'm just watching. Su Shenqing shrugged, looking at the delicious dishes. He couldn't help but feel hungry, but he was still more reserved. Actually, you don't have to come here often to cook for us. It's okay, cooking is also one of my interests. When I'm tired from studying, I cook to relax. The girl replied with a smile, it's a pity that I'm different from you, I can't attend day school. Otherwise, it's not bad to rent a house here. After the previous celebrity incident, Song Yu became a frequent guest of Ying's apartment. She often came to play with Su Shenqing and often cooked for them. And what was surprising was that Song Yu, who looked like a young miss who didn't do household chores, was very good at cooking. If it had to be said how good, it was probably to the extent of beating Su Shenqing by 10 streets. How have you been? Are the media still bothering you? Su Shenqing put down his book and picked up his chopsticks. It's okay, it's much better than before. Fashion is always forgetful, a shooting star like me will soon fade out of people's sight. The girl had an indifferent look. By the way, for some reason, Qin Xingyan didn't seem to want Song Yu to know that he lived here, so every time Song Yu came over, he would hide in the room. Until now, Song Yu still didn't know that there was a third person in this apartment besides Su Shenqing and Mo Li. How about going shopping with me after dinner? Song Yu asked Su Shenqing, who was gobbling up rice. I still have to study. Su Shenqing refused without thinking. We also have to take this course. If you go shopping with me, I can show you the questions I bet on deal. So our hero immediately gave up his gun. After all, judging from Song Yu's results, her questions were worth a lot of reference points. Hee, this time I must. Song Yu showed a happy smile, her face was full of expectation as she whispered softly. What did you say? Su Shenqing didn't hear her clearly. Nothing. The girl giggled. It's good to be able to have fun. The daily life of Ying's apartment continued like this. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.